One to this beast, the humans of the outside world were nothing but simple toys. He liked to call them his rivals, and a brand new challenger had just arrived. This heroic knight was determined to slay the dark creature and end his reign. But the interruption only annoyed the demon, cutting off his train of thought. Unsurprisingly, the foolish knight suffered the exact same fate as the others. His shattered body became another gruesome trophy, joining dozens of prior failures. Next came an experienced old warrior, completely ignoring the warnings of the past. He marched straight up to his massive target and stood his ground. Checking his pocket watch, the veteran realized he was running incredibly low on time. Today was actually his wedding anniversary, and he wanted to wrap this up quickly. He needed to return home to his beloved wife, but the seasoned veteran only met a swift and bloody end. The demon tore him apart without hesitation. After that, a terrified young girl arrived at his doorstep, afraid to enter. She guessed she had finally reached the peak where the master resided. The monster boomed out a terrifying confirmation, catching the young warrior off guard. Honestly, she just felt relieved because she thought she was hopelessly lost. Gritting her teeth, she charged ahead with everything she had. She channeled all her energy into her hands, aiming for a finishing blow. But it was never that simple. Within seconds, she was dangling helplessly. She pleaded for her life, but still became another victim of the tower. The demon quickly ended things, sensing another challenger arriving at his doorstep. Yet another brave soul had somehow managed to ascend to the top floor. He hoped his pile of corpses would finally convince people to stay away. But get this, they just kept coming, and this next kid instantly froze. His limbs locked up entirely, leaving him staring in absolute terror. In a flash of claws, the demon shredded his helpless target. This human toy meant absolutely nothing to him, with one final, brutal strike. He tore the youth to pieces, leaving absolutely nothing behind. The Lord of the Tower knew every single intruder would die here. His name was Baphomet, the absolute ruler and master of this massive structure. His favorite pastime was testing the quality of these pathetic human toys. Nothing brought him more joy than the arrival of a brand new plaything. His eyes would gleam with a wicked, predatory hunger the moment they arrived. Yet with every single victory, a persistent shadow of despair lingered in his eyes. He could not shake the feeling that he was searching for something missing. But their blood offered no answers. Worse, the ancient gateway was locked. It was built to keep him trapped inside this prison forever. The path to the outside world of his playthings was completely shut. He was doomed to wait here endlessly, surviving on brief moments of violence. When the gap between challengers grew too long, he had to find distractions. The endless, boring repetition of this existence was driving him completely mad. His explosive rage grew more volatile with every passing day. In desperate attempts to break free, he began slamming against the gates. The demon was utterly consumed by the suffocating boredom of his prison. He threw heavy blows at the seals, shaking the walls, but nothing budged. Baphomet couldn't understand why he was trapped in this place alone, with absolutely no way out. The furious boss slammed his massive body against the heavy gate again and again. But then a completely unexpected sound broke the silence right behind him. A past victim had dropped their phone, and now the alarm was buzzing. The demon turned around, quickly realizing his previous toy must have left it behind. Just as an idea sparked, the massive doors swung open to reveal a brand new challenger. This warrior had somehow climbed to the very top floor, ready to face the boss. Brimming with confidence, he demanded to know where the tower boss was hiding. He was fully prepared to kill the boss right then and there, until reality hit. The overwhelming force crushed him instantly, leaving him bleeding out on the cold floor. The warrior dropped to his knees, his pride completely shattered as he begged for mercy. As Baphomet slowly stepped closer, the terrified man tried to scramble backward in pure panic. Screaming at the top of his lungs, he prayed for a savior who wasn't coming. In his mind, he was already bracing for his painful, ultimate demise. But instead, Baphomet simply held out the mysterious device dropped by the previous challenger. The demon genuinely wanted to know what this strange, glowing object actually did. Unfamiliar with human technology, his intense curiosity got the better of him. Terrified, the warrior stammered out that the device unlocked using facial recognition. Quickly catching on, Baphomet grabbed the man's head to unlock the screen. Trembling, the fighter quickly pointed toward the camera and started explaining its functions. He babbled on about how it could capture precious moments in an instant. To prove it, he even took a quick selfie with the demon like old buddies. He even went ahead and showed the boss how the strange gadget could play beautiful music. He went on demonstrating all the entertainment apps Baphomet could enjoy here. Seeing the demon distracted, the guy figured Baphomet could handle it from here. Quietly and carefully, the warrior began slipping his hand back toward his weapon. With a sudden leap, he swung the blade to end this beast once and for all. But even while hyper-focused on his new toy, Baphomet was far from defenseless. Reacting in a split second, the demon easily shut down his desperate opponent. Now, having found real amusement in this boring tower, he wanted to see more. He made up his mind to explore the vast world outside, where all these human playthings came from. First, he picked up a discarded notebook filled with totally incomprehensible scribbles. Highly annoyed by this useless trash, Baphomet immediately tossed it away. He tossed the weird drawings away and dug deeper into the pile. Step by step, the demon began piecing together this strange human realm. Buried beneath the gear, he discovered photographs of the very challengers he had defeated in battle. But the phone remained his ultimate portal, packed with endless knowledge. Yet as Baphomet studied everything in detail, a strange problem arose. He became so deeply fascinated by their world that he desperately wanted to step foot inside it. Soon his dark, claustrophobic tower began to feel like nothing but a hollow illusion. He learned that humans believed in a mighty creator they called God. A supreme, almighty being who apparently existed just to grant wishes. Baphomet started wondering if this God could grant his deepest desire, too. Suddenly, a sharp ringtone cut through the quiet, snapping him out of his thoughts. But before he could even grab the device, the sound died, leaving only silence. Then it happened. Baphomet felt a sudden, icy chill run down his spine, leaving him completely bewildered. Right then, a desperate cry echoed through the quiet halls of the tower. Someone was coming. A challenger was already racing toward the top floor. The demon quickly took his seat on the throne, ready for another boring victim. Honestly, he had zero expectations. It was always the same routine. He would just effortlessly destroy his new toy, collect some trophies, and hope for at least some amusement. This warrior seemed no different. He entered the room without uttering a single word. No grand threats. With a cold, silent stare, he slowly sized up. The giant demon showing absolutely no rush to attack. Baphomet didn't flinch either. Unfazed by this seemingly ordinary human, he just watched, waiting for his first move. Finally, Baphomet grew bored of waiting. Forget the trophies, he would strike first. But the night was different. To his shock, the human blocked his strike. A perfect block. Our demon lord immediately realized that this highly unusual challenger, unlike any weakling he had slaughtered before, this was a real threat. In an instant, the warrior gripped his sword hilt tightly. Suddenly, the steel erupted in freezing blue fire, lighting up the pure fury in his eyes. Blinding, precise strikes rained down. Baphomet actually had to struggle to dodge them. But he loved it. The bored tower boss had waited centuries for this. He was genuinely enjoying himself. Slowly, the dark, menacing corners of his lips peeled back into a chilling grin. This was the moment, finally his chance to show his absolute power. A devastating, blinding explosion instantly ripped through the chamber, yet through the clearing smoke, the brave warrior still. He stood tall. Now, our demonic lead decided to unleash his full arsenal. Instantly, a massive barrier of heavy black chains materialized around him. He charged ahead, eager to push this chaotic battle to the limit. The opponent did not back down, matching his ferocious speed and striking right back. Their weapons collided with a deafening screech, sending bright sparks flying across the room. Their eyes burned with raw, mutual defiance. Baphomet was completely swept away, his frozen emotions suddenly overflowing. The ancient demon lord felt alive again. He desperately wanted this glorious clash to last forever. After centuries of absolute boredom, he was ready to put his entire life on line. No more holding back. Baphomet prepared a deadly, high-tier spell. To finish his rival, he broke multiple seals, but the veteran knight was incredibly agile. He rolled clear. This was the ultimate, death-defying showdown Baphomet. This was the glorious, bloody spectacle Baphomet had always desperately craved. The human tried to create some distance, but the relentless demon closed the gap with a single, earth-shattering leap, swept up in battle madness. Tower Lord Baphomet unleashed another crushing strike, but his opponent was no ordinary fighter. He read Baphomet's move instantly, springing high into the air. A spectacular leap. He hovered overhead, completely out of Baphomet's range. Up high, the warrior spun his blade, setting up his final, devastating strike. Instantly, the entire room erupted into blinding, freezing blue flames. Our demonic lead was completely pinned down, unable to move. Baphomet just flat on the stone floor, staring helplessly at his approaching killer. Even at the absolute end, Baphomet didn't move. He was mesmerized because the one last strike, but right before it landed, the young warrior suddenly froze. For a moment, his cold gaze slid over Baphomet like a razor-sharp scalpel. The demon could not understand where this deep envy for a mere toy came from. Finally, Baphomet unleashed his true power, dark energy bursting forth, sweeping away the incoming attack and throwing him completely aside. He rushed forward again, trying to land a hit, but the warrior kept dodging. A massive sharp scythe suddenly appeared in the hands of Baphomet, cutting through the air with a loud whistle as he desperately tried to slash him. Yet despite those lightning-fast attacks, the agile knight kept slipping away. Then he struck. The young man launched a swift counterattack, his blade blazing with blue flames in a deadly, sweeping arc, forcing the mighty lord of the tower to actually retreat for the first time. But the demon quickly raised a magical seal to protect himself, so the next strike failed to break through. Right then, Baphomet began to suspect he might actually lose to a mere toy, and honestly, can you blame him? He stopped holding back and unleashed his full strength. This opponent was definitely no easy target. Suddenly, all the weapons left behind by fallen warriors rose up and flew straight toward the knight. Baphomet knew defeat was simply impossible. It would destroy his reputation as the invincible tower lord forever. Yet deep down, Baphomet started to feel a creeping sense of doubt. Suddenly, a quiet, cold voice whispered right behind him, reminding him that even winning would not bring freedom. These heavy walls would always be his eternal prison, no matter how this fight ended. He spun around in shock, dropping his guard for a split second, and that was all his enemy needed to unleash a devastating strike. Baphomet barely managed to raise a quick shield before brilliant blue flames engulfed him from all sides. But the power of the knight was far too overwhelming, and that defensive barrier was completely useless against it. The demon still could not believe a toy was actually overpowering him on his own turf. Through the blue glow, Baphomet could only see the cold, unflinching eyes of the warrior staring back. No hope left. Feeling utterly powerless, Baphomet froze, stopping all resistance. He could not fight back anymore. After all, he had already lost an arm to the brutal, lightning-fast strike of the young knight as dark blood flooded the floor. Right then, Baphomet realized he was not fighting some simple plaything, but a truly strong, free warrior, someone who had actually become his ultimate dream. Meanwhile, the system suddenly declared the main quest could now be completed, urging him to slay the hunter known as Raven to grant his deepest wish. At that exact moment, the young warrior was notified he had cleared the Tower of the Abyss. It was over. The massive structure began to collapse. He had to run. Through fading consciousness, the defeated demon watched as a man approached the exit. Suddenly, those ancient, locked doors swung wide open before him. Seeing this, Baphomet gathered his final bit of strength to finish his duty, desperately grabbing the blade, impaling his own chest. Just then, a massive explosion rocked the very peak of the crumbling tower. Rescue teams outside scrambled. Workers quickly arrived at the scene to clear away the heavy rubble. Underneath the wreckage, they found lifeless bodies and immediately reported it. It was hard to grasp just how many hunters had fallen here. They risked everything to clear this tower. Then, amidst the ruins, a shadow moved. A lone survivor stood right there among the shattered concrete, looking completely lost. As the rescue team cautiously approached, the man slowly started to react. Our hero was totally dazed. Honestly, he was pretty sure he had died. But fate had other plans. What actually went down in that final battle was crazy. Back then, the dying knight believed with his entire soul that he would win. He was determined to put down the Lord of the Tower once and for all. Summoning every last drop of his energy, he unleashed a fierce blast of power. The attack struck the demon directly, lighting up the dark room in blinding white. But it did absolutely nothing. The knight's blue flame did not even scratch Baphomet. The demon lord stood there, completely unfazed. Then things took a terrifying turn. Desperate rage flared in the knight's eyes. His battered body refused to move. It felt as though a cold, suffocating darkness was swallowing him whole. The brave knight finally realized this was the absolute end. His strength was entirely gone. All his struggles were in vain. A thin line of blood ran down his lips. It dripped slowly past his chin, a scarlet thread of pure defeat. Even though the Tower Lord was beaten, he still took his final revenge. With one swift, brutal motion, Baphomet drove his hand straight through the warrior's chest. He ripped out the knight's still beating heart, a cold, ruthless finish. Back in the present, the rescue worker assumed our hero was just another registered hunter. Searching the hunter database, the worker politely asked for his official name. But the newly reborn demon stood there, totally clueless on how to answer that. Now a human, he muttered his real name, Baphomet. To understand this world, we have to look at the hunters guarding the gates. Their entire job is hunting down the vicious monsters lurking inside these massive towers. Terrifying beasts, normal humans had zero hope of defeating them. Honestly, hunters used to be pretty ignored, then the gate shake happened. Monsters flooded out, and suddenly, these fighters became the world's absolute last hope. Humanity started training squads to clear the towers. That's when they met Baphomet. The terrifying Tower Lord single-handedly wiped out almost every single warrior sent in. After that battle, the demon got highly curious about the human world. He wanted to experience humanity himself, but there was one massive problem. The first people he met mistook him for the legendary hero of the Abyss. Everyone was dying to see his legendary powers, completely unaware of the twist. See, the bad news was that Baphomet had lost every ounce of his power. The former lord of the tower was now just a totally powerless imposter. Yet people still treated him like a god, constantly trying to win his favor. So he ended up leading a simple dungeon mining crew as their figurehead. They even gave him a ridiculous nickname, the Terror of the Underworld. Down in the dusty mines, a seasoned crew of workers has gathered together. A nervous young rookie joins them, visibly shaking before his very first mission. Greeting him, a veteran miner instantly spots the kid's obvious stage fright. The newbie is ready, eager to work. The old miner asks if he has any experience in this work, reassuring him that only sheer physical strength and patience are needed since these tasks are quite simple. The rookie notes that the mine is absolutely massive, and the veteran miner explains that a few years ago it was much smaller. This growth is all thanks to the hunters who defeated the dungeon monsters. Pushing deeper, it is quite safe here. The old man also mentions that he is in charge of facilities C and D, so this fresh newcomer will work in the second zone, where rare magic stones are often found, and it definitely will not be boring there. Suddenly, their friendly chat is cut short. Someone is screaming, "Move aside, clear the way," it turns out that Baphomet has just arrived at the mine, flanked by his new subordinates. He walks right in the center of a pack of tough men who are shoving the crowd aside to clear a path for their formidable boss. The rookie immediately whispers to ask who they are, and the old miner warns him never to cross paths with them. The veteran explains these are sketchy thugs who wormed their way into the mining business and enjoy exerting dominance over anyone they dislike. He warns that normal workers should stay far away from them because Baphomet is by far the most dangerous out of all of them. The rookie did not expect such a hostile gang here. He asks who hired such sketchy thugs. It turns out the mine foreman really likes Baphomet because he knows his job. He gets it done. Nobody can touch him. At that exact moment, the big boss arrives to hand out the monthly wages. He walks right up to Baphomet, handing over a thick envelope of cash. Nodding in approval for his great work this month, he also notes that he already sent most of the salary to the usual place, it seems. Baphomet hates this. He forces himself to hold back his raging anger. And it shows right after his loyal crew rushes over to him, proposing they grab some food or head to an internet cafe to chill. After a long shift, that clueless newcomer decides to join in, completely fearless, and bluntly asks where the chief is sending all of Baphomet's salary, before the guy can even blink. Smack. That is a brutal reality check right there. The other workers scream at him, saying Baphomet will tell them whenever he wants to. Now the terrified rookie is begging on his knees for mercy. Baphomet is shaking, trembling with pure, unfiltered rage. He is completely at his limit, but the sobbing man keeps yelling that he will never do it again. Finally, Baphomet snaps. A mighty roar escapes him, releasing all his pent-up frustration. He cannot believe someone dared ask him where his hard-earned money goes. It turns out that all this time, he has been giving his pay to a shady healer he once turned to for medical treatment after a severe injury. Back then he was totally broke, so she smiled, offered a way out, a strange, twisted deal for Baphomet. Pay with your body, she said. Ever since that day, Baphomet has been slaving away in this mine, with every single cent going directly to that greedy head mistress, though honestly, he did not mind getting away from his old life, but the sheer stupidity of some coworkers is unbearable. Things were starting to get annoying. A few jerks began throwing stones, demanding to know how this nobody became a celebrity so fast. Baphomet just decided to pretend he did not notice them, hoping to avoid dealing with these obnoxious losers. He kept ignoring the bullies, gritting his teeth and keeping his eyes glued to the dirt, but his silence only fueled their anger, making them even more aggressive. They kept repeating their pathetic insults. Eventually, Baphomet realized that being treated like a joke was actually pretty insulting, so he stopped playing nice. His patience finally snaps, and trust me, they are about to regret everything. He decided it was time to teach these loudmouths a lesson. Our demon hero systematically tears through the crowd, fists and feet whistling through the cold air to break noses and crush ribs. The mountain master, watching this brutal revenge, actually smiled with approval. He decided to test the young man's skills for himself, but even the master could not stand against Baphomet, and just like the others, ended up eating dirt. Seeing this, some of the workers suddenly tried to act friendly, though Baphomet still wanted absolutely nothing to do with them. He ended up gathering a small gang of outcasts, but quickly realized this was a pitiful shadow of his old supreme power. The fallen demon grew incredibly angry. This was not the weak human world he wanted to rule. Suddenly, a beast appeared in the mine, lunging at a young worker, realizing he had absolutely no power. The boy screamed for help, his voice shaking with pure, helpless terror. Hunters immediately jumped in, slicing the giant minotaur with their razor-sharp blades. The two warriors did not stop at just one strike, continuing to butcher the beast. The terrified young miner watched in absolute horror as bloody chunks of what was once a terrifying monster rained down right in front of his eyes. Gaining his composure, he managed to thank the hunter, Nim, while her partner asked if the kid was hurt. Watching this unfold, Baphomet froze as a massive crowd gathered around the bloody scene. It hit him. He did not need raw, brute power to execute his enemies. He needed the precise, deadly skills of these hunters. He began to suspect that his supreme demonic powers vanished because he had traded them for a fragile human body. He immediately thought back to the warrior he faced in his last battle, who perfectly embodied strength and absolute confidence. Nearby, the other workers suddenly scoffed, claiming these hunters were not even that impressive because their actual leader was on a completely different level. Everyone agreed with that, knowing without awakened powers, these guys would just be regular nobodies. One of the miners mentioned how hunters made insane money selling monster trophies like valuable magic crystals, allowing them to buy massive penthouses up on the top floors of giant skyscrapers. A bitter miner sneered, believing these warriors got paid for nothing but pure luck, while they earned pennies through blood and agonizing sweat. Right then, Baphomet's companions turned to him, asking with curious eyes what he was thinking and if he had any real dreams. The fallen demon suddenly realized he had a massive, stupid grin on his face. This sudden burst of genuine human emotion caught him completely off guard. So he simply brushed it off, calling their theories hilarious, but his crew had no intention of letting him slide so easily, leaving him deeply confused. Wondering what the actual problem was, they kept their eyes glued to their boss, itching to ask him a burning question. Naturally, everyone wanted to know which of them cracked him up the most, their eyes practically glowing with hope. For a little recognition, Baphomet felt a sudden, familiar chill. This felt exactly like the tower, when foolish challengers would brave his floor just to throw their lives away. Back then, he watched their futile struggles with icy amusement. Missing his absolute demonic authority, Baphomet realized there was a major twist. He did not even have to fight, despite being stuck in this weak human body. He could still control people. The crew quickly realized that they were never going to get an answer, so they tried another route, asking if their boss actually had a name, since he had never shared one. Baphomet gave a cold, blunt reply. He had one once, but he abandoned it. That mystery only fueled their curiosity. One young miner even stepped forward and offered up his own name, claiming his parents chose it carefully, but he never used it. Baphomet, slightly intrigued, asked the kid to repeat the name one more time. But he barely choked out the first few letters when a massive blast ripped through the cavern behind them. The violent shockwave tore through the air, sweeping away everything and everyone instantly. Baphomet was left completely dazed by the deafening roar, his ears ringing and his thoughts totally scrambled. He could not even grasp what had just caused this catastrophe. Dragging himself up, a sudden, blinding pain stabbed deep into his chest. He froze, his mind raced as he realized he had been badly injured. Slowly turning his head, his vision finally locked onto the absolute nightmare. Unfolding around him, through the roaring fire he could just barely see. Burning shapes of his crew, suddenly the entire cavern began vibrating. The stone beneath his palms pulsed like a living heart, making loose pebbles dance on the ground, a warning of worse things to come. He knew this anomaly was bad news, but right now he was totally powerless to run. He could only sit and watch. That was when he spotted the lifeless body of the kid whose name he never got to hear, further away. The others who caught the brunt of the blast lay completely still. It cut deep even as a human. His favorite toys had been taken away. They were his only real source of amusement. He stared bitterly at the silent bodies just as he was starting to enjoy their silly banter and presence. He slumped down, choking for air as thick smoke flooded the cavern. Right then, Baphomet felt a chilling, unfamiliar presence nearby. He knew this had to be the mastermind behind everything. His vision was fading fast, but through the haze, he spotted a figure. It was a mysterious girl. She slowly turned back to him, a wicked grin spreading across her face like a predator cornering its prey. Before he could react, a second blast rocked the mine, cutting off his view of her. Two rank sea hunters charged in to help, forcing the attacker to realize this was not going to be an easy fight, as it turned out. A newly hired worker was the saboteur, having sneaked into the mining zone with a dark plan to seize control of the entire operation from the start. Right from the start, they knew they were dealing with a pretty corrupt hunter who used his powers for robbery and evil. Previously, he had only heard rumors of mine raids. Smirking, the villain replied that they were only half right. Meanwhile, the guy quietly asked his partner if anyone else survived the attack. Get them out, he begged, but she knew the injured stood absolutely no chance of survival, so that didn't matter now. Then it hit her. Her companion actually wanted them to run. He tried explaining that this overwhelming opponent belonged to the fifth rank, making him practically impossible to defeat. He asked her angrily how she planned to fight him, insisting they needed to escape to the surface and call for backup. While they were distracted, the robber lunged forward, instantly knocking the weapons from their grip. Too late, the girl did not even have time to react. Before her lay her headless companion. The killer laughed at how incredibly talkative they were. Enraged, the girl lunged straight at the man who had brutally murdered her partner. But the villain was not bothered by her sudden rush, standing perfectly still. He coolly warned her that letting anger take over was a direct path to the grave. With a single swift strike, he counterattacked. Her foot was gone. The killer casually signaled his crew. Instantly, it became clear that his accomplices were hiding in the surrounding darkness, waiting. Suddenly, dark portals tore open. Right behind him and the rest of his gang emerged. Their eyes gleamed with pure greed as they eagerly gripped their weapons. The boss claimed he already slit her throat because she talked way too much, warning his men not to ruin the rest. She was still alive. He noted her eyes were worth the absolute most on the black market. The gang laughed, celebrating their luck at bagging such a premium catch. A young C-rank hunter, sensing something terrible was coming, she asked in a trembling voice what they were planning to do. The leader repeated his sinister threat. Their guesses were only half right. They were just playing robbers. A predatory grin spread across his face, signaling her impending nightmare. No hope left. Her eyes widened in pure terror as she realized. Surrounded, she looked around desperately, her voice breaking into shrill pleas, but the bandits only laughed. They quickly searched her dead companion and stripped him of his rare, highly expensive equipment to sell. They figured they would pocket the finest loot for themselves, completely ignoring her pathetic cries. Interestingly, they chose not to take their weapons, since doing so would drop their combat strength to 0%. Soon, the bandits grew incredibly annoyed by her constant, useless screaming. The leader mocked her, telling her to give up because only weak miners could ever come to her rescue, but he had no clue someone was already slaughtering his men. only realizing it when strange, agonizing cries erupted from behind. It was Baphomet. Somehow, Baphomet forces himself back onto his feet, fully prepared to slaughter these vile bandits. With ice in his cold veins, he asks who let this terrible tragedy happen. He demands to know exactly which bastard is responsible for the slaughter. The broken hero screams in sheer agony, completely overcome by this overwhelming grief and despair. Right then, a glowing system notification window suddenly flashes directly in front of him. It announces that he completed a hidden quest, unlocking his thirst for vengeance. As a sweet reward, the system grants him the exact powerhouse ability he desired. Now Baphomet is even more determined to crush the trash who dared to ruin his toys. Striding forward with absolute confidence, Baphomet advances on his completely clueless enemies, who never expected anyone to interfere. Our hero has the perfect chance to seize the sword left in the dirt by a dead hunter. Before he touches it, the system warns him that using someone else's weapon will reduce his strength to absolute zero, but then a bizarre system error occurs. As a result, Baphomet chooses the weapon master skill, meaning he can now use the dead hunter's blade with zero penalties, immediately rushing forward to rescue the helpless girl from being dragged away. After quickly slaughtering the frontline fighters, Baphomet corners the bandit leader, demanding to know his identity in a low, deadly voice. This demon-turned human still wants to know who dared to brutally break his precious toys. The remaining bandits have absolutely no idea why this kid keeps talking about random toys. Then, Baphomet demands to know who actually managed to survive his sudden assault. The gang leader just laughs, completely convinced that Baphomet is a total madman. But Baphomet refuses to back down, confronting the bandits directly and asking them once again if they were responsible. The villain just bursts into loud, arrogant mocking. Laughter, tears forming in his eyes as he looks down on Baphomet like a whining child. Crying over a broken toy, Baphomet realizes talking is completely pointless now. He lunges forward with insane speed, determined to slaughter every single remaining opponent. The leader is utterly terrified, and his men completely freeze up, not knowing how to react. Now they finally realize that this dangerous kid is actually a hidden, high-level hunter, and they are suddenly extremely eager to test his true strength. They know it is rare to secure such massive loot and capture two hunters at once. Two thugs instantly pounce on Baphomet, but he stays completely calm, already fully prepared for this clash. At the exact moment they strike, Baphomet disarms the thug with a lightning-fast counter, leaving his helpless opponents completely exposed and defenseless. The first thug does not even have time to blink before the razor-sharp blade is pressed directly against his eyes. The other robber can only watch in absolute horror as Baphomet mercilessly slaughters his partner, pushing down even harder. He drives his sword straight through the man's skull. The remaining bandit grows absolutely furious seeing his partner get executed so easily, so he tries to strike back in anger, but Baphomet is incredibly agile, effortlessly dodging the sloppy blow. To lock his opponent in place, he instantly twists the man's arm with a brutal, crushing grip. A cold blade flashes, and in a split second the head rolls across the dirt, leaving a crimson trail. Baphomet remains completely unfazed by the gore, knowing these ruthless villains deserve zero mercy. Next, he shoots a deadly, piercing glare at the last surviving gang leader, who just grins right back, because he actually respects how ridiculously powerful Baphomet truly is. In the next right then, their blades clash with a deafening ring and bright sparks fly. The bandit senses right away that this young man is incredibly skilled. Impressed by his smooth defense, he demands to know Baphomet's true rank. Our hero stays completely silent, forcing the villain to guess his skill level. He assumes Baphomet must be a C-rank hunter at best. But as the metal keeps clashing, he realizes that guess is wrong. The boy is definitely stronger than C-rank, and he is only getting warmed up. The bandit finally manages a direct strike, but Baphomet slips away cleanly. He does not even blink as a shallow cut starts bleeding on his cheek. The robber is genuinely curious how such a monster ended up in this mine. He wonders if the guy sneaked in here to steal the treasure too. But he quickly shrugs it off because none of those questions really matter. Either way, Baphomet is never walking out of this cavern alive. Our hero gets back into stance, bracing himself for another round. Suddenly, a strike comes too fast to block, and a deep cut gashes his arm. Before he can recover, another thin streak of blood appears on his other cheek. He simply cannot react to these crazy, high-speed strikes. His leg is sliced open next, throwing the young swordsman off balance. He raises his arm to block, but the blade still rips his forearm open. Facing this relentless speed, there is absolutely nothing he can do. All he can do is stand there and absorb the brutal, heavy onslaught. Bandit smiles, loving every single second of this one-sided beatdown. He is positive the kid cannot handle his specialized, spiked whip weapon. That lethal whip is designed specifically to shut down highly agile fighters. To him, Baphomet is just a walking treasure chest of rare biological loot. He wants to kill him while keeping the skin neat and intact. But wait, our hero suddenly blocks the deadly whip, ending the assault. The robber looks completely stunned, never expecting him to survive those attacks. It turns out Baphomet just activated a vital passive skill called Lurch. This single move completely turns the tide of the entire battle. Plus his blood loss state triggers, boosting his combat power even further. The massive stat boost allows him to effortlessly block every oncoming strike. The bandit cannot believe his eyes and screams that he must be cheating. Just a second later, our hero swings and violently blows him backward. The strike does not do heavy damage, but it ruins his confidence. Baphomet strikes again, but the bandit manages to raise his weapon in defense. He blocks the heavy hit, but genuine panic is finally setting in. He has no idea how a simple kid possesses such terrifying strength. Baphomet swings his sword high over his head, aiming to break the block. The robber still has just enough strength to survive the heavy blow. He jumps backward to escape, but Baphomet tracks his movement instantly. Our hero effortlessly closes the distance and gets right back in his face. He is right next to the villain now, ready for another brutal strike. Bandit senses the boy's massive boost in confidence and gets nervous. With a forced smile, he tells Baphomet to stop playing these stupid games. Bandit wanted to wear Baphomet down in a long fight until he simply collapsed. He figured the kid would break under the immense pressure. He thought he was dealing with an inexperienced rank 5 hunter who posed no threat. Yet seeing the hero's confident moves, doubts crept in. He began to suspect his assumptions were completely wrong as the robber suddenly froze in place. His eyes stretched wide with pure terror as he finally recognized his inevitable end. Beneath that ordinary human shell lay something ancient, dark, and utterly terrifying. The terrified bandit stood there, completely paralyzed. Baphomet lunged forward to deliver a strike that hit its mark perfectly. You will not believe the terrifying and cold-blooded revenge our hero decided to unleash next. First came the arm, representing the cheerful guy who used to lead their group. Next, the defenseless villain was forced to pay for his silent teammate with another severed limb. Our hero sliced off a leg to avenge the heavy man who always ate. The bandit simply could not endure the pain. He wept and begged Baphomet to stop, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. Baphomet reached for the remaining leg to avenge Chairman Wu, who died in the blast. That was when the broken villain let out a heart-wrenching scream of absolute agony. It was a sound of sheer primal terror, defying the monster before him. Baphomet towered over his defeated, broken enemy. The blade paused in the air before swinging down to end it. Even on the verge of death, the bleeding robber desperately asked who Baphomet was. But our hero refused to answer, fully prepared to take his bloody revenge on this villain. The villain lay there in denial, unable to believe his life was over. With zero hesitation, Baphomet swung his blade to put a permanent stop to him. He executed the killer, settling the score. Yet even after death, Baphomet kept hacking away at the lifeless corpse. A system warning flashed, stating that seeking such power had severe consequences. At that exact moment, the sudden activation of his surge perk triggered a dark bloodlust. His thoughts warped completely as he began seeing everyone around him as mere meat. Surrounded by dead bodies, he realized he desperately needed a survivor to satisfy his urge. That was when he remembered there was still one more hunter nearby. Baphomet's eyes went completely blank as his mind filled with a consuming desire to murder. His inner demon whispered that he was born for nothing but pure slaughter. His heavy blade swung down toward the throat of the defenseless girl. The defenseless girl simply accepted her dark fate. Suddenly, a group of fresh hunters entered the dark mine shafts. Baphomet froze, sensing their sudden foreign presence. The fighters immediately realized that this boy matched their target's description. Our hero froze in place, locking his cold gaze onto the newly arrived group of fighters. Driven by his wild bloodlust, he only saw them as fresh prey. The fighters realized they had seen his face somewhere before. But before they could even process the danger, Baphomet broke free and lunged directly at them. The young man was completely unstoppable, blinded by the scent of blood. He refused to let anything block his path as he charged forward like a demon. Then the mysterious glowing figure from the tower suddenly flickered back to life. Standing before him, the entity declared it worked way too hard to save Baphomet's life. So it refused to let him die easily, gently calming him into a deep sleep. To the nearby hunters, the entire scene looked pretty bizarre. Like Baphomet had suddenly collided with a massive, invisible wall. He collapsed unconscious at their feet, raising endless questions. Finally quieted, his inner demon suddenly heard an echoing voice calling out. The voice pleaded for the Lord to give orders so his loyal subordinates could finally begin their task. The dark entity lost all self-control. It craved only to slaughter everything in its path. Soon, Baphomet wanted to destroy all of humanity, ready to do whatever it took. Suddenly, a fallen warrior appeared. A ghostly blade easily pierced his chest, stopping the beast right in its tracks. A freezing voice echoed directly in his mind, demanding to know how a simple prisoner of the tower knew so much about mankind. The warrior stared down with dead, soulless eyes and called Baphomet a pathetic weakling. To him, the knight's judgment was absolute. The weak deserved only death, and that was exactly Baphomet's coming tragic fate. Talk about a close call, but thank goodness it was just a nightmare. He woke up in a completely unfamiliar room, struggling desperately to slow his breathing. He gasped, trying frantically to understand what had just happened. He scanned the strange room, completely confused by his new surroundings. How on earth could he be here when he was deep inside the mine just moments ago? Suddenly, a cold voice drifted from somewhere in the shadows. Baphomet's confusion deepened, and he immediately demanded to know who was there. The unseen stranger, hiding in the darkness, answered with a very sharp, mocking tone. He scoffed, calling Baphomet nothing but a self-proclaimed imposter. He recognized him, having heard of the rookie who cleared the deep tower of the abyss and single-handedly eliminated the powerful target they had all been tracking down. In truth, Baphomet had absolutely no clue what the man was referring to. He figured the guy meant the trash he brutally killed to avenge his fallen hunter friends. The investigator had already run a thorough background search on our mysterious hero, discovering absolutely zero records in the main system database, as if he had no past. He was a total ghost with no official registration, yet possessed terrifying combat power. His ultimate survival, the stranger made it clear that everything depended on his explanation. He had to reveal his mysterious origins. Rejecting this pathetic treatment, Baphomet charged forward with absolute rage. He smashed his fist against the reinforced glass partition with immense force. He had zero patience for mind games, demanding to know what they wanted. The interrogator definitely did not expect the boy to be this incredibly bold and aggressive. For a few seconds, he was completely speechless. Such shocking behavior. Baphomet coolly suggested a change. He should introduce himself first. Sitting behind glass like a coward, not very polite after all. He openly admitted to being an imposter who eliminated the actual hunter, but blamed those incredibly pushy, enthusiastic reporters who forced him into the heroic spotlight. Baphomet explained he only took down that trash because he got annoyed, and he would gladly slaughter the bastard a second time if he ever resurrected. The figure behind the glass then asked if Baphomet wanted to try doing that to him. Baphomet was ready to let this scoundrel know exactly what he thought of him, but the stranger suddenly burst out laughing. He cackled uncontrollably, sounding completely mad as if he were totally insane. Baphomet stood there completely stunned because he could not understand what triggered such a wild, explosive reaction. It turned out the stranger was laughing at the demon's foolish overconfidence. He mockingly asked if Baphomet actually believed he could kill him now that he had finally left his safe, protected room. Roa noted that Baphomet now had the perfect chance to show his skills, laughing loudly again. He wanted to find out what the kid's real plans were. The demon froze in place when he finally saw the face of the mysterious man he had been addressing. The memory of the hunter whose brutal battle had completely changed his life still haunted Baphomet's mind. His cold, piercing stare was forever burned into the young demon's memory. Baphomet immediately lunged at the stranger. Because he looked too much like that deadly hunter, suddenly a blinding flash streaked before his eyes, putting an instant stop to his strike. The man's smug smirk never faded, showing he was not the least bit afraid of Baphomet. Just a couple of seconds later, the demon found himself flat on the floor, barely realizing what happened. Talk about an absolute reality check. This confirmed Roa's suspicions that Baphomet was indeed an awakened hunter, though Roa was still far stronger. It took only 2 effortless moves to completely immobilize him. Finally, the leader introduced himself, explaining that their organization was a secret agency called the Horn, built to prosecute rogue lawbreaking hunters. Right then, another agent arrived, fully backing up every single word, while Roa continued to explain that the hunter who got eliminated was actually supposed to be put down on the spot. He was wanted for horrific crimes, having infiltrated multiple hunting groups under fake identities to murder and harvest the organs of weaker hunters. The officer explained that among wealthy, aging billionaires, there was a dark superstition that consuming the organs of young awakened targets restored health and granted eternal life. The Horn was actually grateful to Baphomet for doing their dirty work, but he was still being charged with the murder of 5 accomplices they had closely examined every corpse and noticed how clean the cuts were. Clearly a simple raw awakened hunter could never have pulled off such an incredibly brutal slaughter in the first few minutes. Because of this, Roa concluded that Baphomet was an incredibly experienced professional killer. Even though Baphomet himself believed he was just a fake, Baphomet could not believe he was so completely powerless against this insanely powerful opponent, which made him absolutely furious because he had fought with everything he had just to take on this human form. He was sure that if his power level had only been higher from the very start, or if his body had been stronger, that hunter and this agent would have been torn to shreds long ago. Still, the leader of the Horn made it clear they would still have to punish Baphomet. Roa's partner stepped in, continuing to argue that the kid was a natural-born killer, so they should nip this threat in the bud before he caused real trouble. Caught in this trap, Baphomet realized he was totally helpless, simply forced to accept his bitter defeat. The scene shifts straight to the main office of the Hunter administration. Inside the lobby, it is completely packed with newly awakened people. They are all desperate for official hunter status. Friendly receptionists happily hand out combat weapons, asking how the hunters plan to pay for rentals. Next up is applicant number 122, receiving a warm greeting. But this quiet guy just hesitates a moment before speaking to her. Surprisingly, this is actually our main character, Baphomet, who somehow managed to survive that chaotic battle. The boss of the Horn only intended to give him a little scare. He had absolutely no intention of doing anything bad or causing real harm to Baphomet. The leader notes the guy is incredibly lucky, since even elite forces cannot do this. On top of that, the leader openly admits that he actually really likes our hero. Baphomet looks like a capable fighter who can get any job done. Confident in his assessment, the leader declares our hero will be an incredibly useful asset. Our main character is going to work at Raj, fitting their needs perfectly. Back in the office, the guy finally tells the receptionist he wants to register. The receptionist immediately asks him to hand over his identification card and official hunter certificate. Turns out the cleanup team over at Roga agreed to completely alter his entire background profile. They altered his official biography to issue him a brand new hunter permit. Thanks to all their dirty work, he clears the official verification scan without a single issue. But now he must decide on a unique hunter nickname for himself. The special ops guy already explained this rule. They help separate active hunters from the rest of normal society. The receptionist reminds him that his chosen nickname must be totally different from his legal name. Agents from the Horn had previously warned Baphomet about their dangerous operations. Their dangerous operations require absolute silence and anonymity, meaning it is much safer to blend in. But internally, our protagonist is sure they will deeply regret leaving him alive. He fiercely promises himself that he will eventually become stronger than every single one of them. Ultimately, he proudly refuses to hide his identity and chooses Baphomet as his official alias. He wants his name to strike terror into everyone. After registering, he immediately hunts down some giant wolves. Slaying these wild beasts is absolutely zero trouble for him, and he cuts them down effortlessly. But the vicious predators refuse to back down and launch a sneak attack. The predators try to ambush the young man from behind, but Baphomet reacts without any issues. He spins around with fluid grace, turning their clever plan into a disaster. This proves to be a highly fatal mistake, and the beast is slaughtered like the rest. Terrified by this brutal display, the surviving beasts howl and halt their aggressive assault. They quickly hesitate. This savage opponent is just too brutal. Defeat is completely certain, so they quickly scramble to escape. But this is definitely not a cowardly escape. They are calling their massive pack leader. Giant Alpha immediately raises its sharp claws. Baphomet just stands there, totally bored by the massive beast looming over him. He casually extends a single hand and completely stops the massive creature in its tracks. Next, he raises his arm to signal his backup team to advance. He stands completely frozen in place, expecting his comrades to rush forward and assist him. But it seems his allies have completely abandoned him or ignored his call. Out of the shadows, the wolf had also been waiting all this time for a fight to start. But nobody else showed up to join. That's when the predator finally realized that his opponent was fighting completely alone, so he lunged straight at our hero, right after. Suddenly, everything felt entirely wrong to him. In reality, Baphomet only needed a single strike to completely take down his opponent and end the fight. With job finished, the former boss quickly teleported away from the scene, but honestly, he felt pretty annoyed that only a fraction of his true power had returned. Baphomet figured out his strength was tied directly to his chosen target, so his current output perfectly matched those weak little bandits. He just couldn't make any sense of it all because they wanted too much. Honestly, the poor guy had no clue who could answer his questions, since he had basically been talking to himself the whole time. Either way, he knew exactly what he wanted and what he was working so hard. His ultimate goal was absolute power. He wanted to rebuild his strength and reclaim his old peak. Rebuilding from nothing didn't terrify him, since it wasn't his first time. Starting all over again. Just then, he felt an incredibly creepy laughter echoing behind him, almost as if some dark presence was hiding deep within his very soul. Baphomet instantly got on guard, thinking another deadly enemy had snuck up on him, but it turned out to be just his coworker, who was pretty upset that our hero was actively drawing so much attention. This Horn Guild employee was holding out a phone with an active video call from their boss, who simply couldn't believe this kid had actually dared to run around calling himself the Supreme Lord of the Abyss Tower. Despite his shock, the boss understood that our guy simply wanted to call out the people calling him a fake, but everyone already knew the real deal. He then revealed that the official investigation into the Abyss Tower was finally finished, confirming beyond any doubt that the massive place had actually been cleared out entirely by the legendary hunter Raven. Sadly, Korea had just lost its greatest demon slayer. Baphomet, that was pretty bad news for a rookie, but this guy honestly didn't. He didn't care. Our hero kept his laser focus on one ultimate goal. He was getting stronger and completely silencing his loudest haters. Talk about absolute confidence. The leader just stared back in dead silence, unable to comprehend how this new recruit could be so incredibly stubborn. He figured the kid was probably just all talk, firmly believing the rookie would break the moment things got tough. So the boss challenged him to deal with the consequences of his bold claims by heading straight to Jeju Island. Once they arrived at the docks, Baphomet completely froze, totally mesmerized by the beautiful scenery. He instantly realized that this was the gorgeous ocean he had only ever seen in phone photos. His partner pulled out his phone, mentioning they should catch a quick taxi to their destination. With only 2 hours left before the start, Baphomet was completely ignoring his partner because he was already sprinting toward the shore as fast as possible. He simply couldn't miss this beautiful view, rushing forward to play in the water. Meanwhile, his partner Taeyeon recalled his recent conversation with their guild leader. He honestly couldn't believe they were actually going to leave someone so wild on active duty, but the boss firmly reminded Taeyeon that this job was never meant for mentally stable folks. They explicitly wanted someone completely ruthless, making the new guy an absolutely flawless fit for the position. He needed to keep a close eye on him. Meanwhile, Baphomet met some tourists. They were on vacation, loudly discussing their plans when Baphomet noticed something off. One guy stood out from the typical Korean crowd, staring back with striking blue eyes. Our hero gave them a dark, sinister look, sensing they were a completely different kind of toy. Taeyeon quickly jumped in to defuse the incredibly awkward situation. He dragged Baphomet away before the former demon lord could embarrass them globally. Once clear, he led our main character straight toward a large, imposing facility. This was where rookie hunters gathered for their mandatory career guidance. Baphomet was totally lost, so Taehyun explained it was just basic training. It was a training course to develop rookie abilities, and the staff handed over his gear. They handed our protagonist his luggage, identification card, and a brand new smartphone. Taehyun warned he would call him Chairman Woo around others, and he didn't mind at all. He was just happy with his new phone, but that name carried real weight, choosing it to honor his dear friend who died in a brutal gang attack. Taehyun suddenly cut off his deep thoughts, announcing it was time to move. Baphomet was completely caught off guard, assuming they would go in together. But Taehyun just smirked, telling him he would figure it all out on his own. No choice, our main character absolutely hated this lazy approach, but he had to go. Accepting his fate, he walked alone into the Grand Career Guidance Assembly Hall. Standing right there on the main stage was none other than Ma Seung-moon himself. Suddenly, everything Taehyun had been warning him about clicked in Baphomet's mind. Once the boring official speeches finally wrapped up, everyone headed to the buffet. At the food tables, our hero finally cornered him to demand some real answers. He asked Ma Seung-moon how a Horn member could possibly be working here. The leader quietly explained that his day job was managing rookie hunters. It was a strict cover, and he could never reveal his true organization. Jamin Woo scoffed, pointing out how unfair it was that he got called an imposter. Ma Seung-moon just laughed off the complaint, saying their situations were totally different. He urged the former demon lord to look closely at the room. The other rookie hunters had done nothing but whisper about him for an hour. They hated him. His terrible reputation had actually united them into a strong team. With a common enemy to hate, Baphomet quickly became their prime target. Arrogant, narcissistic, that is what they called him, but he could not care less. Smiling casually, the leader asked him to keep his distance for now. He didn't want Baphomet's terrible reputation ruining his own standing as a mentor. Just then Ma Seung-moon was pulled away by another coworker, leaving him alone. He wasn't bothered by the cold shoulder, choosing to focus on the buffet food. But as he reached for a plate, he sensed a chilling shift and froze. Elsewhere in the room, coworkers began questioning Ma Seung-moon about the rumors. He played it cool, claiming this new hunter division was nothing special. But others pointed out that the supposed fraud was drawing government attention. His loud entrance into the hunter world had created a massive stir upstairs. Ma Seung-moon quietly suggested they could negotiate to get him proper documents. Let's be real, covering for his weird new recruit was becoming incredibly exhausting. It was getting harder to defend him when his behavior remained so utterly bizarre. The problem was that even Ming-hoon's subordinates hated Baphomet, so now he was a complete outcast. Just then he turned around and saw that for some reason our hero had a blissful look, as if he was trying to enjoy the whole situation. The leader was actually glad the guy had enough mental strength not to despair, but right then other hunters walked into the dining hall, immediately drawing everyone's attention. Froze in absolute shock at the sight of the newcomers, it turned out they were rank hunters, and Ming-hoon couldn't understand why people liked them. Could have ended up here. He tensed up immediately, and his colleague was equally surprised, since they had received a notice that several hunters would be starting an advanced training course today. The staff thought this was a great opportunity for the rookies, since these powerhouse fighters could become their role models, but Ming-hoon did not like this at all. He knew this wouldn't end well for Baphomet, who was still completely unaware of the tension and just happily eating. Our main character recalled that he had taken a smartphone from one of the toy monsters in the tower, which showed delicious dishes like this. He had always been curious to try it, since as a demon he had never felt actual hunger. The guy remembered that in the human world, people wish each other bon appetit, but before he could take a bite, some guy brazenly poured water all over him. Naturally, everyone in the hall noticed this and turned around, waiting to see what would happen next. The high-ranking hunters had decided to introduce themselves to Baphomet, a rookie they already despised. Young elite had long wanted to see this imposter with his own eyes, but now he was thoroughly disappointed, having expected to see a completely different person. Ban Jie-chuan's companion stepped forward, reminding him that this kind of behavior was unacceptable. The hunter scoffed, explaining he simply couldn't walk past such a scoundrel sitting peacefully in their midst. The young man apologized for his friend anyway, but noted that Baphomet had brought this on himself, since the real demon Baphomet had killed many of Their fellow hunters, to him, choosing such a nickname was a real slap in the face to all of that monster's victims and their grieving loved ones. He was about to suggest changing it, but Baphomet didn't feel like waiting any longer, abruptly flipping the entire plate of food right onto his offenders' head. Everyone around them gasped and started whispering excitedly because they surely didn't expect such a crazy turn of events. Ming Hun couldn't intervene since his own subordinates were only making the situation worse, so he slammed his head against the table with all his might, wishing he didn't have to watch. Even Ban Jiechuan himself did not expect such a swift retaliation. For the first few seconds he couldn't even process what had just happened. He immediately decided the rookie was practically begging for a death wish by acting so bold. But Baphomet didn't care why everyone was so obsessed with the name, as the real demon certainly wasn't rising from the grave over a silly nickname. Ben Jiechuan was absolutely furious that the guy was so careless about all of this. Our main character just wondered why these useless hunters didn't go and defeat Baphomet themselves if they cared so much about those deaths. Even the second hunter starts sweating. Things are going way too far. Baphomet refuses to back down, mockingly suggesting that they have absolutely zero courage. He claims these supposedly elite warriors simply lack the actual strength to conquer the tower. He knows they are just furious because his brutal truth cuts right to the bone. Their tempers flare. Hearing this, Bang Jiechuan completely loses his mind. He unleashes raw physical power to crush the arrogant punk. Ma Xiangun watches. He stands there in total disbelief, unable to step into this crazy fight. In reality, our hero just ripped open a very painful old wound. Bang Jiechuan lost someone incredibly close to him inside that unforgiving tower. He painfully remembers the good old days. Raven always praised his skills. His late comrade had always believed in him, cheering him on to succeed. He was sure Bang Jiechuan would easily claim his elite, a rank classification. Overwhelmed by absolute grief, the furious hunter swings to crush Baphomet. Even our powerful hero is caught off guard by this incredibly explosive attack. He hesitates, completely unsure of how to react to such a lightning-fast strike. Suddenly, another hunter steps right between them, halting the forbidden battle. An enraged Bang Jiechuan spins around to see who dared interfere with him. Even Baphomet, used to fighting alone, is stunned by this sudden rescue. The surrounding crowd gasps as they recognize the elite hunter who stepped in. Baphomet squinted at the newcomer. He looks exactly like a past opponent. The shocked whispers of the onlookers quickly confirm his growing suspicion. It is none other than Raven's younger brother standing right there. Almost nobody knew that the legendary fallen warrior had such a relative. To make things crazier, he is the youngest A-rank hunter around. They call him Griffin. Bang Jiechuan immediately knows he stands zero chance. His aggressive partner instantly backs down, offering a highly polite smile. Nobody expected Griffin at a retraining session, yet the bully still seethes. He still desperately wants to teach Baphomet a painful lesson. But Raven's brother calmly intervenes, pointing out that our hero did nothing wrong. He believed his late brother was simply weak for dying to Baphomet. Hearing this cold disrespect, Bang Jiechuan glares at him with disgust. He calls him an ungrateful bastard. Suddenly, Ma Xiangun jumps right in. He realizes this confrontation is getting dangerous with so many people watching. Bang Jiechuan is completely enraged, spitting venom as he rants. He complains that the management is insane for letting such garbage inside. His partner knows there is no stopping him now and just sighs. Ma Xiangun completely ignores the insults, keeping his composure perfectly. He understands that the hot-headed hunter is just acting on raw emotion. He forces a polite smile and apologizes to Griffin for the chaos. Then he approaches Baphomet, acting like they have absolutely no history together. He orders our hero to step aside and shut his mouth. He warns him to stop talking back. Surprisingly, Baphomet stays quiet. Knowing he cannot risk exposing himself, he silently decides to cooperate. But Griffin is not done. He clearly has some lingering questions. He shoots our hero one last chilling glare before walking away. Soon, all the new hunters gathered with Eugene, who was leading the introductory lecture on the system. She reminded them that when hunters experience their awakening, they immediately see a system window appear and asked if everyone understood the concept, but our main character, Baphomet, paid absolutely no attention to her words because he was still thinking about What had just happened, right after their conflict, Masung dragged the guy into the restroom and strangely ordered his junior to punch him. Baphomet could not understand why he had to strike his own leader, but Masung explained that this mess would have been avoided if he had not hired him. The mentor stood his ground, shouting and demanding that his subordinate punish him with his own fists. Seeing that the leader was completely serious, Baphomet realized this was a perfect chance to get some payback. Masung was annoyed that his subordinate took him literally, but the rookie explained he just couldn't hold himself back. Honestly, the boss only wanted his new recruit to practice self-control and make a real effort until he became much more powerful. Masung explained that absolutely nobody would dare to criticize Baphomet once he was strong, but for now he had to keep his head down because rank hunters are unbeatable monsters. Meanwhile, all kinds of rumors flooded the internet, claiming that the guy who acted like the hero who conquered the tower was a complete fraud. The other trainees were furious that such a shameless scoundrel dared to join them as if nothing had happened. Feeling deeply humiliated by his presence, they were in no mood for lectures. Overhearing their toxic gossip, Baphomet suddenly smashed his fist into the broken vending machine, instantly grabbing everyone's undivided attention. Glaring at them with a terrifying gaze, he muttered that it might be a fun idea to smash this broken machine that just took his money. The other students were absolutely terrified, quickly realizing it was best not to mess with this guy. They immediately made up a sudden excuse to leave, immediately claiming they had to watch a live duel between elite A rankers. As they ran, they thought Baphomet had the eyes of a cold-blooded killer. Meanwhile, Baphomet hoped his little scare tactic would keep them quiet and was quite pleased that he settled the matter without having to use his fists. Even better, a free beverage rolled out of the vending machine, instantly lifting his mood. Taking a refreshing gulp of his drink, the boy recalled what those gossiping rookie hunters mentioned about an exhibition match among the A rankers. Intrigued, he decided to check it out at the training hall. The battle was already in full swing, with one fighter slammed hard onto the ground. His victorious opponent was Banji Huan, a guy our hero thoroughly disliked from their past encounters. The defeated challenger admitted that he never expected to win, but he certainly did not regret taking on the challenge since the duel gave him incredible experience. The announcer then declared that the hunter Leon had officially secured his 9th consecutive victory, asking if any other hunters dared to step up and try their luck. Of course, nobody was eager to take that risk since it was clear that Banji Huan stood completely unmatched. Suddenly, the champion himself stepped forward. Griffin sat quietly off to the side, being the only candidate who could offer real competition. Even the experienced veteran himself never expected this matchup. Even the experienced veteran did not expect Lion to spar, but he ultimately agreed to it. Soon, Banji Huan laid out the rules. The first to grab the band wins. The target was a simple blue band. Just then, Ma Sun Woon entered. He instantly saw the rookies testing their limits once again. The manager did not mind. It was good practice. They were perfect role models, but his focus lay elsewhere. He kept his eyes locked on Baphomet, hoping for change. Nearby, the girls gossiped. They thought Griffin was gorgeous. One already planned to ask for his number, a total hunk, she thought. Eugene and Ma Sun Woon traded knowing, sly glances, smiling at their smitten colleague. The other girl quickly agreed. Griffin was incredibly popular. She asked the general manager how old he was. Ma Sun Woon paused. He hesitated before revealing that Griffin was only a high school sophomore. That shocker hits different. Meanwhile, the intense fight had officially begun. The young fighters locked arms instantly, pushing and shoving with everything. Banji Huan wanted to see his late friend's brother in action. Griffin offered absolutely no reply. He just stared back with cold, silent fury. With a swift, highly practiced motion, he broke the tight grip. He spun instantly, launching a roundhouse kick at Banji Huan. The veteran did not stand still. He instantly launched a direct attack. Griffin reacted in the blink of an eye, ducking low to escape. No time to waste, the young man prepared to strike again. Despite the incredible speed of the blow, his opponent successfully dodged. Griffin relentlessly pressed the attack, still nothing connected. Finally, he closed the gap completely, getting right into his face. He grabbed Banji Huan's arm, but his swings were wild. The veteran decided it was time. He had to teach him a lesson. He reached out instantly, his hand closing right on Griffin's blue band. Victory was right there. Banji Huan clenched his hand to tear it away. But in the blink of an eye, the young man completely vanished. Suddenly, Griffin was right behind his back, plans completely ruined. Banji Huan spun around, realizing he was now in a terrible position. The rookie made his final move. It was quick and clean. He snatched the armband. The winning streak was over. Pure silence. Everyone froze, stunned by the sudden outcome of the fight. Our protagonist watched closely, finding Griffin to be a highly interesting person. The referee called it. Griffin was officially declared the winner. Nobody in the crowd had even noticed his brilliant counterattack. They all agreed he was amazing, even without using special skills. This confirmed his absolute supremacy among the elite A-rankers once again. They whispered he would reach S-rank soon. Banji Huan realized something. He had let him win earlier, but in the end, Griffin seized the moment. He won fair and square, a victory his late brother would be proud of. Meanwhile, Griffin asks to test Baphomet's strength himself by continuing the fight. Our hero certainly did not expect one of the hunters to challenge him right now. With the sudden challenge thrown down, Baphomet has no idea how to even respond. Banji Huan stands there completely lost, getting more nervous by the second. It makes him look weaker than some random imposter, making the administrator uneasy. After all, Baphomet is just a novice who stands zero chance against an A-rank hunter. But then the senior manager steps in, thinking this duel is actually a fantastic idea. Minmun believes this is the perfect way to show the gap between them. It will show the brutal difference between a rookie and an A-ranker. The administrator doesn't argue, but insists that Griffin needs to be restricted. He insists that Griffin must hold back during this fight to keep him alive. Baphomet cannot understand his mentor's play here, especially after his earlier advice. Keep a low profile, that is what Minmun told him hours ago. But the mentor secretly thinks a few heavy punches will help humble Baphomet. Actually, our main character is pretty interested in this clash himself. He really wants to see the strength of Raven's younger brother. Deep down, Baphomet knows he cannot beat an opponent of this tier. He does not even want to try, but he still aims to land some solid hits. Suddenly, Griffin lunges forward with a speed our hero can barely track. At the very last second, Baphomet throws his hand up to block the strike. He quickly realizes that landing even a single blow is going to be tough. No pushover, Baphomet is literally fighting just to survive. He has to stay alive because this A-rank hunter is showing zero mercy. Just seconds into the match, Baphomet is already slammed flat onto the floor. He looks up just in time to see a massive fist rushing toward his face. But Griffin deliberately punches the ground next to him, just to terrify him. Baphomet starts realizing this challenge is about way more than mere curiosity. He gets a sickening feeling that his opponent genuinely wants to tear him apart. The crowd can feel the pure fury radiating off Griffin right now. Some random kid dared to use the moniker of his brother's killer. Everyone watching already knows how this ends. Look at that rage. It is completely obvious that Baphomet has absolutely zero way out of this. He is facing certain doom, yet he stubbornly refuses to give up. Even through intense, crushing pain, he manages to swing his leg up for a kick. But in a flash, Griffin vanishes, reappears behind him. Griffin grabs him by the throat and slams him ruthlessly back into the ground. Danger, he is in an incredibly dangerous spot once again. Griffin flips him over his arm, driving him down with brutal, shattering force. Somehow he breaks free, the power is still there. But the young man is sweating now, realizing his opponent is just playing with him. He is being toyed with like a mouse, making the ancient demon inside him rage. If he had his original strength, Griffin would not even be standing. Fortunately, Baphomet has been studying his enemy's movements very closely. By reading the patterns, he manages to narrowly dodge the next few incoming strikes. Honestly, Baphomet is starting to regret letting this fight go on. Despite the strict limits, Baphomet wanted to unleash the true power of Raven's younger brother. For now, he kept taking brutal punches straight to his face, yet he still dreamed of seeing how his opponent would fight at full power. He wanted to see Griffin fight at full power, a thought that actually excited him. A faint blush crept onto his cheeks as he stared, completely ignoring everyone around him. People around him still watched in concern. Then, out of nowhere, Griffin suddenly stopped the fierce duel, declaring to everyone that there was absolutely no reason to keep going. Completely thrown off, he did not expect the veteran hunter to walk away now. Griffin calmly told the administrator there was simply no point in. No point. Baphomet stood there frozen in confusion. Completely frozen in place, while his opponent casually turned away to scan the crowd for another. A fresh match, an intense urge suddenly took hold of Baphomet's mind. He desperately craved a real clash, wanting to experience the true depths of his opponent's power. But then he remembered his leader warning him that 100 clones. Against an rancor, yet a strange, floaty sensation suddenly took hold of his entire body. Washed over him like he was lifting right off the floor. Instantly, a wicked smirk spread across Baphomet's face. He had absolutely no intention of backing down, as the dark beast lurking deep inside his soul finally. The demon broke free. Griffin immediately sensed it. A chilling aura was pouring directly from Baphomet, sensing immediate threat. The hunter kept his back turned until the very last second. He spun, intercepting the demonic strike and sending Baphomet flying back with a single, incredibly devastating blow. Sanan was completely stunned by this, and his crew could only stare, in absolute shock, trying to process the sudden explosion of power. Meanwhile, Griffin quickly checked on the direct impact of his heavy counter, only to immediately realize he actually used too much force. Baphomet took the hit head-on and crashed straight through the window. Outside, relaxing guests jumped in absolute terror as they saw Baphomet plummeting out of control, straight into the pool, sending a massive wave of water everywhere. Panic erupted among the swimmers as the peaceful atmosphere shattered instantly. It did not take long for them to realize a drowning man. The guests scrambled to help, while Baphomet cursed his luck under the water because even though he got to taste Griffin's real, terrifying power, he had one major and immediate issue. He could not swim. Within just seconds, he began sinking. His lungs filled with water, sending him into absolute panic. He started losing consciousness, but right before he blacked out completely, he spotted a blurry female silhouette gliding through the deep, murky water. He fought to stay awake, utterly shocked that someone had actually dived all the way down to save his life. Floating before him was a stunningly gorgeous girl with bright blonde hair and deep blue eyes. She swam hard, but still completely failed to grab a hold of him. Gathering his last bit of strength, Baphomet forced his eyes open to focus on his beautiful savior. With his lungs completely starved of air and panic setting in, he desperately grabbed her hair in a blind survival reflex. Clinging to her head with absolute wild panic, he dragged her down with him, completely catching the poor girl off guard as they both began to sink together. Her friends also began to worry, as it had been quite a while since she dived in to rescue the drowning man, but the next second, strands of golden hair floated up to the surface, sparking instant panic. Her friends realized that something awful had happened and immediately called for backup. Meanwhile, our hero was seeing visions of demon number 18. Just then, his partner told him to stop standing around like a statue and get ready for work. The demonic warrior was pretty confused, unable to understand what anyone was even saying. Before he could figure it out, Baphomet lunged from the shadows and decapitated him. Right after that, the main hero finally snapped out of it, realizing with shock that he was no longer underwater. Honestly, he was not too shocked since these visions had happened to him before. Looking around, the young hunter spotted the very same girl who had tried to rescue him. Peering closer, he realized she was a foreigner and tried to recall everything that just happened. Suddenly, he made eye contact with another girl who looked quite displeased. That Baphomet was staring at her friend, our hero got pretty spooked, since he really did not expect to see anyone else here. Glancing around, he saw that the other girls had surrounded him completely. He was still a bit dazed, unable to make out who these random strangers were. Just then, the panicked managers rushed out onto the street and immediately began to apologize, claiming they were entirely to blame. On top of that, the employees instantly recognized the woman standing before them as a top representative of the Ark Guild, a powerful hunter named Echidna. Mason Woon had no idea she would be here and quickly asked if she was hurt, but she just ignored him and called out for her assistant, Yun Hai. It turned out that the assistant had been diving in the pool this entire time, gathering strands of hair that Baphomet had accidentally ripped from his savior's head during the panic. The guild leader warmly praised her subordinate's efforts, patting her head like a cute dog. Mason Woon watched this bizarre display in absolute silence, feeling quite baffled. Finally, Echidna explained the whole situation. Their guild was having a private pool party when some guy suddenly fell from the sky and crashed their gathering. Mason Woon confirmed it was just a novice hunter and apologized profusely, but Echidna remained deeply annoyed. She pointed out that those hair strands were incredibly precious, since they held the insane cost of a luxury hair treatment in Canum. Premium organic ingredients and a lot of sleepless nights, moreover. She had put in so much effort to get her lazy friend to actually care for her locks. Since that hair belonged to their guild member, it was priceless. No one expected Echidna to care this deeply about a few hairs. So the entire crowd fell dead silent, having absolutely no idea how to respond. Breaking the silence, Mason Woon offered his deepest apologies once more and asked how they could make things right. The hunter then glared at Baphomet, demanding that the young rookie take full responsibility for the damage. Baphomet certainly did not expect such extreme anger over an accident. Meanwhile, Echidna coldly declared that over 1 million won had been invested. One single damaged hair meant the young man owed 116 million won. Musen Woon could not imagine how badly he messed up in his past life. He had to pay for it now. Either way, Baphomet thought the whole thing was nonsense. It was total nonsense because he had absolutely no clue who this girl even was. The other guild members were shocked that Baphomet genuinely did not know her. It turned out she was an elite S-rank hunter known as Valkyrie. She ranked first in popularity, boasting insane combat skills and stunning looks. She was a top-tier commercial model whose face was recognized everywhere. Everything she wore sold out instantly. Eventually, the guild leader had to step in. She ordered her subordinates to stop wasting precious time explaining all this. They were lecturing a newbie. Echidna then suggested a way for Baphomet to pay. He could pay in monthly installments, or they could find him a job instead. Hearing about a job instantly triggered Baphomet's deeply buried trauma. He remembered the woman who forced him to mine, thinking this leader also looked down on him. But she did not mean that at all. Soon, Baphomet suggested finding the real culprit. He wanted to look into whose fault it actually was in that chaotic situation. He pointed the finger directly at Musen Woon and his clumsy team. They failed to take the proper precautions when things first went sideways. Baphomet complained that Griffin kicked him so hard he went flying out a window. Hearing Griffin's name left the female guild members completely speechless. Getting on that man's bad side was a death wish. Echidna hesitated. She desperately wanted to avoid any trouble with his guild. Starting a conflict with the powerful Nebula Guild was a massive mistake. The hunter himself stepped up, casually admitting to launching Baphomet into orbit. Right then, Eugene stepped in to explain it was just a friendly match. A simple sparring session between an A-rank veteran and a complete rookie. Still, Echidna was torn, as none of this changed the outstanding debt. He still owed them a fortune. Suddenly, Musen Woon tried to smooth things over. He promised that his association would take care of everything personally. He knew they were deeply involved in this mess, but there was a catch. Paying them directly in cash went entirely against official government directives. Instead, they offered something far better, exclusive rights to a high-value tower. This system would allow a single guild to monopolize an entire dungeon. They could harvest valuable magic stones and rare items with zero competition. Musen Woon revealed they owned a tower left untouched for a year and a half. He offered Echidna the exclusive rights to exploit the dungeon for a full year. She admitted she could not make such a massive decision all by herself. She needed to consult her guild members first. Eugene, however, still had doubts. But Musen Woon explained that handing over the rights was actually their best option. It meant the guild would finally step up and clear the dangerous zone. A few minutes later, Echidna cleared her throat to deliver their final decision. The proposed deal was simply too lucrative for them to walk away from. Their guild accepted. Eugene and Musen Woon were absolutely thrilled. With the crisis averted, both sides could finally put the matter to rest. Meanwhile, the girl who tried to rescue Baphomet finally regained consciousness. Echidna instantly rushes to her friend's side, asking if she is okay. She gently nudges her, saying they need to get out of here. Valkyrie notices Central Command officers standing nearby, leaving her completely baffled. She missed everything while unconscious, but her friends promised details later. Meanwhile, our main hero cannot stop staring at the gorgeous woman. She is the one who risked everything to drag him from the deep water. Walking past Baphomet, she acts completely indifferent at first, but then hesitates. Turning back, she locks her piercing blue eyes onto him, reading his face. He is totally caught off guard by the intense, direct stare. To his utter surprise, Valkyrie simply gives him a highly flirtatious wink. She clearly holds no grudge against him, but Baphomet is left stunned. He simply cannot process what just happened. Nearby, Masson steps up. The organizer wants to apologize for not predicting this crazy incident. He feels responsible for the chaos. However, the hunters feel pretty awkward. They know they shared the blame, so they tell him it is fine. No apologies needed. Soon, our hero heads back inside the main facility. He cannot help but think these female hunters are totally money-hungry. That strange wink from the foreign beauty still keeps bothering his mind. He wonders if it was actually a silent challenge to a duel. Watch out, a sneaky hand is reaching for the blue armband on his wrist. It is Griffin. The persistent rival still refuses to let his target go. Griffin knows Baphomet is supposedly weak, making the robbery make no sense. How did this rookie steal the armband? Suddenly, a loud noise echoes. The crowd shifts focus to some poor guy flying out of a window. Amid the chaos, Griffin stands completely still, frozen by a sudden cold dread. A bizarre, heavy numbness washes over his hand as he slowly looks down. The strange feeling confirms it. Baphomet really did swipe the armband. But actually, the fabric had been floating in the pool the entire time. It drifted loose right where Baphomet made his big, messy splash earlier. Our hero realizes Griffin is stalking him just to ask about this band. He explains that the hunter's wild, overly wide swings made it easy. The loose cloth was basically begging to be snatched away. Griffin frowns. He snaps back. Only a highly seasoned warrior could spot that detail. Suspicion grows deeper. Baphomet is clearly no ordinary, low-ranking rookie. He demands to know who he really is under that pathetic facade. Our main character feels the pressure of his cover blowing. He pauses. Before answering, he shifts the pressure back onto the angry hunter. He asks if Griffin targeted him purely because he uses the name of the legendary beast that slaughtered his brother. Griffin tells him to stop, changing the subject, but our hero refuses to give him answers. He prefers talking to smart adults, not angry, over-emotional kids. Finally, Griffin defends himself, insisting he has zero desire for revenge. Avenging that absolute trash is not his goal. Our hero is surprised. Griffin admits he just wanted an easy target to unleash his rage. He simply needed a proper sparring partner to absorb all of his anger. With that, Griffin asks if Baphomet is satisfied, but Baphomet wants to ask something else. Our hero suggests that the real reason behind Griffin's anger is actually quite simple. He had wanted to kill his own brother with his own hands all this time. But Baphomet, acting as the dungeon's demon, had gotten in his way. Hearing this, the young hunter instantly freezes, desperately trying to keep his composure. Baphomet only smiles, which pretty much confirms the young hunter's worst fears. Baphomet felt no real rage during their fight, but right now, Griffin is absolutely seething. Griffin stays silent, making Baphomet even more sure that his guess was spot on. He is completely convinced now, even as Griffin tries to play it cool. The hunter acts like it is impossible to murder another hunter, especially a brother. Baphomet does not buy that excuse for a second, knowing humans are far from saints. They kill each other all the time, but one mystery still remains for Baphomet. Why on earth did this young hunter want to murder his own flesh and blood? Realizing there is no point in explaining, Griffin quickly changes the subject. He brings up the terrifying, murderous aura that Baphomet released during their clash. An aura like that can only be found in one very specific place. That kind of oppressive pressure belongs either deep inside a dungeon or the tower itself. And it only ever radiates from the absolute highest rank of terrifying, high-level monsters. It makes zero sense for a regular human to possess such an inhuman vibe. Because of this, Griffin suspects that Baphomet is actually a monster in disguise. Instead of answering, Baphomet just laughs out loud to keep his secret safe. Honestly, our hero finds this young hunter to be a pretty amusing toy. Just like his brother before him, Baphomet asks what the hunter plans to do next. If his wild theory is true, what is Griffin going to do about it? Griffin's answer is simple: monsters must be put down, no questions asked. Baphomet smiles, noting that their fates are now bound by death. They are in the exact same boat now, stuck in a deadly game. He cannot wait for the day Griffin finally discovers his true monstrous form. Yet even with these dark suspicions, Griffin remains completely cool and collected. Baphomet is actually loving this, hoping the hunter will grow much stronger. If Griffin doesn't get stronger, Baphomet will end up killing him far too easily. The very next day, Baphomet heads out to an undisclosed location with Ma San-won. The guild leader explains that Baphomet can't keep bouncing between internet cafes and baths. It is high time he gets a real roof over his head. So they prepared a house as a reward for finishing his basic training. Finally, they arrive right at their destination. They pull up to what looks like a totally abandoned courtyard. It looks super sketchy, but Ma San-won insists it is traditional. He proudly calls it an eco-friendly home surrounded by lush nature. But in reality, the entire place looks incredibly rundown, creepy, and gloomy. Baphomet immediately starts yelling, absolutely refusing to live in this dump. But Ma San-won already expected him to throw a massive tantrum. He tells Baphomet to chill out and not take things so seriously. An isolated house on the outskirts is the perfect spot for his anger issues. Looking a bit closer, Baphomet reluctantly admits it might not be completely terrible. The overgrown grass was easy to clear, making the open yard look surprisingly decent. Ma San-won never expected the young recruit to take all this so calmly. He couldn't believe Baphomet wasn't complaining, thinking something was wrong with his head. Maybe that sudden plunge into the pool had scrambled the guy's brain completely. The man was even slightly upset that his fun was gone, which annoyed Baphomet. Seeing Baphomet's cold reaction, Ma San-won finally decided to ask a direct question. He asked if anything weird had happened since they first met. Baphomet immediately thought of Griffin, who was basically stalking him now. He could feel the stalker's gaze constantly, which made him incredibly uncomfortable. His annoying rival wouldn't even leave him alone in the bathroom. But Baphomet kept quiet about it. Meanwhile, an observer watched from the shadows. A mysterious figure had been tracking their entire conversation. This hidden spy realized the rookie could be incredibly useful for his own schemes. Suddenly, Baphomet's sharp senses detected a hidden threat, so he warned the leader about his weird feeling, but Ma San-won didn't suspect a thing. Ma San-won didn't want to waste any time, so he started the briefing. He wanted to explain exactly who Baphomet would be spying on this time. The next day, Baphomet arrived to meet up with his new combat group. He was joining 4 other hunters and a mentor for some real field experience. The entire squad was already waiting, but Baphomet was running slightly behind. His new mentor never expected to be guiding such a notorious rookie. But here's the catch, this mentor was actually Baphomet's real target. Baphomet was assigned to monitor him, but he wasn't happy about it. Following someone around was boring. He preferred instant kill missions instead. He wanted a high-value target he could eliminate in one smooth strike. The leader explained the strategy, asking if Baphomet understood the term hunt. He assumed Baphomet was already pretty familiar with standard hunter terminology. In the field, it means driving a target straight into a dead end. But there's another level to this game, and it gets way darker. You corner every single pawn first, just to draw out the real mastermind. That's exactly why Baphomet needs to dig up this mentor's deepest secrets. He must expose the shadow controller, but the leader warned him. This target's boss holds some serious, high-ranking power. Flash forward to the meeting, where Mentor Quartz introduces himself with a smile. He shares a quick, friendly story about his transition from freelancing. Mentor notices Baphomet staring back with a rather intense expression. He asks if the rookie has any questions, but Baphomet stays silent. The rest of the squad remains quiet too, so the briefing continues. Quartz moves right into standard safety protocols without wasting time. As he listens, Baphomet recalls the leader's dark warning about this guy. This rogue is preying on other hunters, and Ma San-won wants more. He ordered Baphomet to get close and extract as much intel as possible. He needs to gather concrete proof and capture the target alive. Baphomet didn't mind these rules at all, because either way, he was ready to cut down anyone standing in his path. He had to take the limb of his mentor, keeping him alive. The problem, our hero did not know how to get close to his teacher, but once they met, Quartz showed him the D-rank gate where monsters of that exact tier lived, explaining that the recruits had to clear the area by following his exact orders. Instantly, the rookies froze up because none of them had real combat experience. They could not understand why they were being shoved into a high-ranked dungeon. Their papers clearly stated they were still F rank. Quartz had to agree. It was pretty unfortunate, but pointed out that their rank still got assigned. Gates up to D rank. He was completely sure this had been explained during their orientation, though one female hunter shook her head, claiming she had never heard a thing. At that, our main character chimed in, reminding them that E and F rank monsters are highly vulnerable to weapons, meaning hunters start their training in D rank dungeons. Of course, he only knew this because his annoying boss forced him to memorize the entire manual just so he could suck up to his mentor. He backed up the words of Quartz, adding that their combat zone was not limited by weapon power and that this was a standard D-rank entry point, so his teammates did not need to panic. In the end, the mentor put a stop to the chatter, telling his students to grab their gear and move out. That was when he noticed Baphomet had no weapon, but Baphomet just pointed to his fists, explaining that he did not need a blade. Suddenly, another hunter forcefully shoved him aside. Baphomet glared back to see which teammate had dared to act so aggressively, but when he took a closer look, he realized he had actually seen this insolent guy somewhere before. He remembered that this trio was the group staring at him. Suspiciously from the start, this aggressive hunter rushed straight into battle. The very second they crossed the threshold into the dungeon, it turned out that he was actually pretty strong, requiring just one slash of his blade to tear through his enemies. The rookie was thrilled to have taken down one beast, totally blind to the monster charging at his back. At the absolute last second, he raised his blade to block the heavy strike. While his mentor watched carefully from the sidelines, Quartz agreed that his raw strength was decent, but his swings were too wide and he completely lacked agility. Next, he evaluated the girl, who was doing well, but lacked the focus and raw endurance to finish her combinations. The other guy had massive destructive power, but his accuracy was completely zero. Quartz concluded they all lacked something, but watch closely here. Baphomet was totally different, easily dodging every blow. Every strike thrown his way, completely fearless before his foes, he easily slipped past two massive beasts, dancing around them with the grace of a butterfly. Fluttering through flowers, the beasts grew furious because they could not hit their target. Enraged, they made one desperate charge. In the end, our hero slipped away, causing the beasts to crash directly into each other. He did not even need to break a sweat to win. A moment later, he sensed that these were definitely not the only opponents nearby. Goblins are even easier targets, and Baphomet leaps right at them with absolute force. He crushes the first monster in an instant, but two small beasts are still lurking nearby. Charging the survivors, Baphomet closes the distance before they can react. Baphomet grabs both of their skulls, squeezing his massive palms with terrifying power. Their heads burst like ripe fruit. Quartz watches closely. The mentor realizes this newcomer operates on a level unlike anyone else here. To Quartz, Baphomet seems like the ultimate warrior, boasting raw strength and perfect agility. His quick thinking and sharp reflexes are incredibly rare among awakened hunters. But at the same time, the veteran mentor feels a sense of mystery. The mentor knows no rookie could fight with such brutal skill. Assuming this is just natural talent is incredibly naive. Meanwhile, Baphomet tries to smile nicely, just like his boss instructed. Winning over his target's trust is the goal, but his smile looks like a threat. Soon, the rest of the hunters clear their sectors, earning some well-deserved praise from Quartz. Quartz is just glad that the entire team survived without major injuries. Even with all target monsters cleared, Baphomet is far from satisfied. This easy victory leaves him empty, and slaying weaklings is incredibly boring. He desperately wants a real fight against a foe who can strike back. Suddenly, he remembers that his mentor Quartz is actually a high-ranked hunter. Baphomet thinks that challenging Quartz would make a massive impression and secure his trust. This feels like the perfect way to finish his secret mission. It is a brilliant shortcut, and he wonders why he did not think of it sooner. Meanwhile, the female hunter wonders if the dungeon boss is about to appear. They already wiped out every minor creature, so the nest should be empty. Quartz finds the quiet atmosphere strange too, telling the group to stack the monster corpses. After piling up the dead beasts, the rookie hunters look over their work. They ask if this pile is big enough, and Quartz nods in confirmation. Now, every requirement for summoning the local dungeon boss has been fully met. With all the fresh blood pooled in one spot, the scent is impossible to ignore. Watch out, the monster is bound to catch the blood scent and rise. Suddenly, a violent tremor shakes the cave as a colossal beast ruptures the earth. Quartz yells a warning, identifying the massive beast as a hostile deathworm. But while the others panic, Baphomet remains completely cool and unfazed. He stares at the giant worm with total indifference. Quartz explains that the death worm hunts by blood scent, urging everyone to stay sharp. Fear quickly grips the rookies as they realize the sheer scale of their opponent. One hunter prays that Quartz will step in if things go south. Suddenly, Baphomet charges past and kicks his teammate directly in the face. Baphomet wants this giant prey all to himself, refusing to let anyone interfere. Get this, the mad move was solely to steal his teammate's sword. The others watch in horror, completely outraged that Baphomet just stole a weapon. They warn him that no hunter can use someone else's gear. Even Quartz is blindsided by this stunt, reaching out to stop the madness. The mentor has no idea about his cheat skill and tries to stop him. But Baphomet slips away effortlessly, raising the stolen blade to unleash a devastating strike. To finish off his foe, the rookies couldn't comprehend this kind of crazy. Leap staring with their mouths wide open to see what would happen. Next, their mentor also realized he was completely helpless, freezing right. Placed to watch his student, he slowly resigned himself to the bitter truth that this brilliant talent would perish right before his eyes. Meanwhile, Baphomet moved with absolute confidence, closing in on his target with deadly precision. Right before the final strike, Baphomet focused all his strength and unleashed a sharp lunge. The massive deathworm shrieked in horror as it lunged to swallow its prey. An instant later, his blade sliced the air, leaving the monster looking completely untouched for a brief second. But Baphomet's strike hit home, tearing the dungeon boss's body to pieces. The stunned onlookers never expected Baphomet to actually wield someone else's sword so flawlessly, staring at him in utter disbelief. Mentor Quartz couldn't utter a single word, only offering a tense, nervous smile. Then Baphomet slowly turned back to face the companions who had doubted his strength just moments ago, locking them in a bone-chilling stare. In his time spent around humans, Baphomet learned that mortals always follow those who hold real power. That was exactly why he showed off his fearsome abilities. He knew right then that this power was the ultimate human rule. Meanwhile, his team couldn't believe he took down that giant monster in one shot. Honestly, the young hunter envied how cool Baphomet looked. Nearby, the girl could barely even think, her heart racing as she fell for him. Then Quartz broke the silence, clapping loudly and praising his flawless battle. Seeing his apprentice succeed so easily, the mentor knew right then that the decision regarding Hunter Baphomet was set in stone. The demon was sure he looked incredibly cool, hoping his showcase would bring his mentor closer to him. Instead, Quartz happily declared that the prodigy no longer needed any training, congratulating him on a job well done. Baphomet soaked in the praise, his face completely lighting up with a smug grin that showed his absolute joy. However, only seconds later did Baphomet realize he might lose his connection to his ultimate target today. Quartz explained that since his skills were already perfect, he had no more need for basic combat lessons. The young prodigy could officially start working as an independent hunter, he added. It had been ages since anyone completed their training at this speed. Next, the mentor decided that all the valuable magic stones would be split among the hunters who cleared the dungeon. Meanwhile, Baphomet began to sweat, quickly arguing that the boss was quite easy, desperately trying to prove he wasn't ready to go solo yet. The only issue was his team's pale faces, showing they found this fight insanely difficult. Quartz agreed their time together was short, but highly memorable, wishing him the best of luck. The demon still couldn't believe his perfect scheme had completely derailed. Suddenly, someone called out to him, snapping Baphomet out of his deep panic about wondering what he did wrong. Baphomet looked around in absolute confusion, searching for who was calling out his name. Turns out it was actually that same female hunter from his own team, who desperately wanted the brave hero's phone number. Soon, this piece of gossip reached Manhwa, who was extremely unhappy with how things were currently playing out. You see, he was prepared for things to get difficult, but the reality turned out to be even harsher than he had ever expected. The boss actually started worrying that he gave the rookie away too brutal first task. Manhwa changed tactics to something much simpler, explaining that Baphomet now had to track down a very specific target in the form of a rogue hunter who needed to be put down immediately, the boss. Even allowed Baphomet to personally choose how he would punish the criminal. For that reason, the young man could unleash his absolute most brutal methods, Ma Sanwu. Even suggested dumping the dead body inside the active dungeon so it could be completely destroyed. During the final cleanup, Baphomet easily dealt with this S-rank hunter and walked out of the portal, which closed and hid the criminal's body behind. The young man was thrilled to walk away with a massive haul of magic stones, since he could easily trade them for cold cash and buy a tasty meal. But despite the food, Baphomet still could not forget what had transpired over the last few days. He kept replaying Ma Sanwu's words, obsessively dissecting every piece of advice and warning over and over. Suddenly, that exact moment when the leader asked if Baphomet was actually angry came. Rushing back, rage, pure rage, as Baphomet completely loses control and punches the wall. A loud crack, stone breaks, failing his mentor had hurt deep. Botching his first assignment devastated him. The young man hated Quartz, total bastard. He ruined his entire plan. Meanwhile, the target kept recruiting fresh rookies, dragging them straight down into the dungeons. Baphomet kept trailing him, finally realizing that it was totally foolish to trust in friendship. Dead wrong. Now he had to link Quartz directly to the crime. There was no choice. He knew the basic rules of hunting dictate that a successful hunt starts by fully understanding your prey. With that in mind, Baphomet gathered every scrap of data on the guy to map out his entire daily routine, while also keeping tabs on his connections with local hunters. He was positive that by deeply studying Quartz and his dirty secrets, he would inevitably stumble upon some incriminating evidence. So he kept tailing him even long after the man finished his training sessions. It was incredibly easy for Baphomet to stay hidden, but he still hit a complete dead end. The real issue was that during this entire stakeout, the guy could not find a single shred of evidence linking his mentor to any underhanded activities. Clean, absolutely nothing. Right now, Baphomet only realized with a grin how long it had been since he tasted fresh blood. Honestly, his dark side is really showing, as he wishes this was a lawless zone. In his twisted mind, Baphomet was already chopping off the hand of an unsuspecting Quartz. Doing this would render the target completely helpless and unable to fight back. From there, he could drag out the physical torture for as long as he wanted, slowly forcing his old mentor to spill every last hidden detail of the crime. Baphomet knew this was the right call, and as for Quartz, he finally sensed that something was off, realizing his presence was exposed, forcing him to quickly slip behind a corner. But at the same time, he knew this human world required a completely different approach. He had to play by human rules. Just then, Quartz ran out in a frantic panic to escape his pursuers. Baphomet couldn't comprehend why he was running, so he kept tracking his target closely. Eventually, the frantic man stopped and began cautiously scanning the area. In pure terror, gasping heavily from the sudden adrenaline rush, he searched frantically, desperately seeking a familiar face in the empty streets. Quartz was trying to find Yu Hun, whom he deeply cared about. But it turned out the girl had been standing right behind Quartz the entire time. Completely confused as to why he was so visibly upset, she saw him pale with fear and asked what was wrong, only to quickly find out he was terrified because she had not been answering her phone. Yu Hun admitted she got distracted while grocery shopping, leaving her phone behind at the store. She must have left it in the shopping cart. Seeing his terror, Yu Hun felt how violently the man was trembling in her embrace, her heart aching with guilt for causing him such deep pain. She gently asked if Quartz was hurt, but he quickly told her not to worry. She then suggested they go home so she could cook him a warm dinner. Baphomet observed this emotional scene in silence, glad to witness this side of his target's private life. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a remote, quiet location where a brutal battle has just ended. Ton is wrapping up his mission, planning to clean up the bodies after reporting to headquarters, when a notification suddenly flashes on his phone, distracting him from the grim task. It is a message from Baphomet, who has a highly unusual request. He wants to know how to stage an accident. The next day, Quartz returns home in absolute panic, frantic eyes searching every single corner for Yu Hun. To his utter shock, Baphomet is sitting inside and the girl is carefully treating the young man's fresh wounds. Our clever hero, with a secret plan already in motion, acts surprised to see his target As the story goes, Baphomet saved Yu-hun from an oncoming car and got hurt. He flatly refused any hospital visit, leaving them with no other choice but to bring him inside. Yu-hun has absolutely no clue that she has invited another hunter into her home, while Baphomet quietly scans the surroundings, spotting framed photos of the happy couple on the nightstand. He reaches out to inspect one. Suddenly, Quartz appears behind him, catching his suspicious guest red-handed, and firmly grabs him by the arm. He thanks Baphomet for saving his wife, but asks for the license plate of the car that almost hit her. Recognizing that this conversation might take a while, Quartz suggests they step outside to talk. Right then, Yu-hun steps in, smiling warmly as she offers a completely different idea. She insists they have dinner, but Quartz looks highly reluctant. She knows they are colleagues, making her even more eager to show hospitality to her savior. Hearing the offer, Baphomet does not hesitate and he eagerly dug in, devouring the plate of steaming hot rice. Quartz noticed he was eating well and kindly asked if he wanted some more rice. Once the young man finished his plate, Yu-hyun got up to serve our hero some more. Baphomet, remembering his goals, stared at her, intently assessing her every move. She quickly noticed the main character's heavy gaze but brushed it off. In the end, the friendly hostess simply asked if he needed anything else, but he politely declined since he only wanted rice. Baphomet just couldn't understand why she seemed so distant. Suddenly, his train of thought was interrupted by Quartz, who asked if Baphomet liked working as a hunter. The older man wanted to offer some advice, but their conversation was cut short by a shattering plate. Quartz immediately jumped to his feet, deeply worried for Yu-hyun, but she quickly apologized for the loud mess, telling him not to worry about it. Baphomet remained perfectly calm and simply pointed out that Quartz was an incredibly caring husband. Then the young man casually brought up that the mentor had once lost someone precious, carrying a strange, knowing tone. Quartz tried to object, but our hero quickly changed the subject, claiming he suddenly remembered the license plate of that car. Baphomet then asked if they had a scrap of paper so he could quickly write it down. But here is the tragic twist. This girl had actually passed away long ago. As it turned out, Quartz had known Yu-hyun since they were young children, forming a quiet, invisible bond between them. That close friendship lasted through school, growing stronger every day. Eventually, those warm feelings blossomed into a genuine, deep love for each other. In the end, the dream wedding that Quartz had always wanted bound them together forever. Shortly after, he joined a team of hunters, where teammates knew him by a different name. When the young hunter made his career choice, his wife begged him to reconsider. While the job seemed exciting and prestigious, it was dangerous, putting him on the front lines. But Quartz brushed his wife's worries aside, talking endlessly about how one could clear dungeons in high-ranking towers and harvest priceless, legendary items. But eventually, Yu-hyun got through to her husband, and he willingly gave up his dream of becoming a famous hunter just for her. When he started his new job, Quartz received a special teleportation device, capable of sending someone straight to a safe zone, but he gifted it to his wife. Sadly, those peaceful, perfect days did not last. Shattered by a catastrophic dungeon break, Yu-hyun found herself right in the epicenter of the chaos, desperately hiding around a corner to avoid the monsters. In her panic, she remembered the escape device Quartz gave her for extreme emergencies, fully trusting that this tool would keep her safe. But fate had other plans. Just as she was about to use it, she heard a terrifying scream from someone already caught by the beasts. Yu-hyun simply could not stand by and watch, so she courageously distracted the massive ogre with a bucket of water. Doing so, she managed to grab the terrified victim and run away, escaping together. All it took was a tiny pebble caught under Yu-hyun's foot to trip her up. Finally, she let go of the girl's hand and crashed heavily onto the hard ground. The stranger asked if she was okay, but Yu-hyun urged them forward. Hurry, a safe shelter just had to be close by. Searching through the scattered debris on the ground, she spotted a familiar device. It was a teleportation device, their ticket to safety. Suddenly, panic crept into the girl's voice, making Yu-hyun freeze and look up in sheer terror. Clenching the device, the stranger offered a cold apology to the woman she left behind. She quickly reached out and pressed the activation button. The system chimed, confirming immediate transport to the designated safe zone. Yu-hyun reached out, desperately trying to grab the girl, but she was too slow. In a flash of light, the stranger vanished, safely escaping into the shelter. Left alone, Yu-hun realized she was doomed. There was no escape. Facing her final moments, Yu-hun thought only of her beloved, completely unaware. Unaware that a massive, monstrous serpent was looming behind her. This was the end. Yet somehow her husband had done something to her corpse, keeping her moving. Meanwhile, Quartz was busy tracking down the car used in the attack. Someone had tried to run his wife down, and he wanted answers fast. Since Quartz worked for the government, they pulled some strings and got him the address. He immediately rushed to the suspect's location, hoping to catch the culprit. Instead, he stepped into a half-empty apartment, but the sight inside stopped him cold. What lay before him was absolutely mind-blowing, defying all his expectations. There stood Yu-hun, staring blankly out the window as if she were a doll. Her vacant eyes showed she finally understood the truth. She was already dead. Shocked, Quartz realized this whole situation was spinning out of control. With a trembling voice, he asked his wife why she had returned to this place. Just then, the heavy doors behind him slammed shut, sealing them inside. A new shadow emerged. It was Baphomet, who knew the hunter would follow. He knew Quartz wouldn't hesitate to hunt him down to protect his wife. Honestly, Baphomet still had no idea how his target fit into the crime. The details were fuzzy, but he was certain of one critical thing. He believed Quartz had already paid a heavy price for his past sins. Losing his wife was surely the most agonizing punishment possible. Quartz growled through clenched teeth, ordering him to get away from his wife. But Baphomet completely ignored the warning and mocked the state of Yu-hun, showing that she was nothing but a mindless, hollow shell. Furious, the hunter yelled again, demanding that Baphomet back away. Instead, Baphomet grabbed the girl by the cheek with a mocking grin, demanding to know how Quartz had managed to preserve her dead body. Driven mad with rage, Quartz prepared to tear the smug youth apart. But Baphomet had a sickening plan, and he didn't hesitate. Without a shred of hesitation, he shoved Yu-hun straight out the high window. Quartz froze in absolute horror, his heart shattering at the sight. Watching his beloved fall, he was helpless to stop the tragedy. Mentor collapsed to his knees, utterly crushed by the unbearable weight of despair. Shaking off the crushing emotions that had consumed him, our protagonist noted that the girl was already dead, demanding to know why they did not just resurrect her right now. He told his mentor to end this pathetic act and stop pretending that he felt any real sorrow. It looked like Baphomet had successfully uncovered the dark truth about Quartz, who glaringly fixed a terrifying gaze onto him. In an instant, the furious mentor summoned his weapon from his inventory to teach our hero a brutal lesson. The real catch was that Baphomet had to bring his rogue teacher back alive, forcing him to fight with extreme caution. For this exact reason, Baphomet planned his strategy, aiming to cut off only one of Quartz's hands, but the hunter completely ignored any threats from the main character charging straight ahead. Trust me, they clashed with such fury that their blows literally ripped heavy doors right off their hinges, cracking the nearby walls. Soon the entire hallway was choked with thick dust and flying debris, so the combatants vanished from sight. Suddenly, they crashed right out of the room. Still trying to tear each other apart, Baphomet swung his blade masterfully, but his adversary was incredibly fast too. Quartz quickly realized that the battle was turning dangerous and that this kid was a major threat. He frantically spun his spear to form a shield against Baphomet's strikes. Quartz tried to time a decisive blow to end our hero, but at the very last second, Baphomet slipped past it. With a swift twist, the guy hurled the heavy scythe aside to open up space for a counterstrike. Quartz tried to stab Baphomet once more, but our hero was fully prepared for such a move, smoothly parrying the mentor's weapon away from himself. Quartz's mind was now totally consumed by blinding rage, and he showed no mercy for his former student, wasting zero time as he swung the spear to end this battle, throwing his weapon with brute force right at Baphomet, who did not foresee such a desperate move. At the absolute last millisecond, Baphomet raised his hand, with a dagger barely deflecting the lethal blow aimed at him. Our main hero lunged forward, his body fading into a blurry shadow as he darted rapidly between the narrow walls of the room. Within a heartbeat, Baphomet was hovering right above his opponent, ready to unleash a heavy strike, but Quartz reacted with lightning speed to the motion, his cold, predatory eyes scanning the air. It looked like he expected this exact counter, and he calmly flicked his finger in the air. Suddenly, a blinding beam of light erupted, grazing just inches from Baphomet's face, but it did not slow him down. Quartz kept his gaze locked on our protagonist, desperately trying to land a decisive blow. Fortunately, Baphomet managed to spot his opponent shifting the spear behind his back and moved to react. This sneaky trick was incredibly clever. Seriously, how did he see it coming? Baphomet ducked just in time to save his own life. As they clashed, Quartz began detailing the history of how everything started during his early childhood, sudden memories of young Yuzin, the girl he had loved deeply from the very start, flooded the hunter's mind, but Baphomet did not care to hear the sob story, launching a swift assault. Still, the mentor continued to reminisce about how they stayed in touch even during their high school years. Back then, she was just a fiery, hot-tempered teenager with her. Her sharp words could burn, but Quartz patiently took every single blow. Right then, Baphomet found himself deeply drawn into this tragic tale. He realized that the bond they shared was incredibly powerful. In dark times, Yu Haiyan wept, and Quartz felt helpless to save her. But he never left her side, and they walked through life together hand in hand. From youth until their hair turned gray, they shared both joy and sorrow. They became two halves of a single soul. Then, Quartz remembered the crushing moment he found his lifeless wife, unable to believe his eyes. He couldn't comprehend why she remained outside despite having her lifeline. She had a special teleportation device inside the safety of the shelter. Quartz had anticipated the worst and left it with her, but it failed. In the end, the veteran hunter realized someone had stolen the device. They snatched the teleporter from her, and they were hiding inside right now. With chaos outside, no one would notice if one useless resident quietly died. The furious hunter envisioned piercing the thief's heart in a single breath. But then he suddenly spotted the used teleportation device lying on the ground. This broken crystal still held the stained, dried blood of Yu Haiyan. Those precious last drops of life could have saved her from this tragedy. Suddenly, alarms blared as Quartz received urgent notifications. Monsters had breached the hideout, and the other fighters were desperately screaming for help. At that moment, the man realized Yu Haiyan was destined to die. A cruel fate had marked her for death from the start. Overwhelming grief consumed him, unable to accept this devastating sorrow. Their bond was torn apart, making Quartz certain of one dark path. They had to be together, even if death was the only option left. He truly believed he could rewrite history if he defeated his opponent. But Baphomet didn't care about the rogue hunter's tragic excuses. He had absolutely no intention of losing this intense battle today. He swung his blade with lethal precision, severing the hunter's arm entirely. Tearful sob stories meant absolutely nothing to Baphomet anymore. He had dealt with too many desperate villains begging for pity. Quartz went dead silent, clutching his bleeding, mangled shoulder. Baphomet coldly declared the fight was over the second the hunter faltered. Emotions had dulled his blade, leaving the young warrior completely unimpressed. He stared down at his broken opponent before shouting in absolute frustration. He had trained tirelessly for 2 whole weeks just for this final showdown. Yet it ended in seconds. Still, the veteran didn't regret his actions. He did everything solely to save his wife, annoyed at this young challenger. Baphomet coldly reminded the rogue hunter of his duty to capture criminals. But Quartz refused to back down, claiming he did absolutely nothing wrong. He firmly believed that his beloved Yu Haiyan deserved to live. There was no sin in defying a fate that cut her life short. He only wanted to rewrite a destiny that should have never happened. Hearing these pathetic justifications only made Baphomet even more furious. He still lacked the full picture, but the crime was undeniable. He knew Quartz was an accomplice. Baphomet just could not believe it. The man actually dared to claim he had done nothing wrong while twisting the concept of evil. It was a disgusting attitude that tarnished the definition of villainy. Then Baphomet moved in. He gripped his dagger tightly as his resolve hardened into solid ice. The young warrior decided to end this useless talk and just execute the man. He wanted this pointless chatter over. Meanwhile, Yu Hun lay motionless outside the window. She had fallen and was lying right under the house, because she was already dead. She survived the impact and began to stir. The sharp scent of blood drifted over, snapping her awake instantly, though her eyes held absolutely no trace of human warmth. Right then, an emergency system alert flashed right in front of Baphomet. Notification warned that a mutated beast had spawned due to a fatal system error. It urged all nearby hunters to eliminate this terrifying threat immediately. He stared at the screen, brushing it off as some ridiculous glitch in the programming. He had no idea the threat was already standing right behind him. In a flash, a ghastly, mutated hand reached through the doorway. Quartz felt the chilling atmosphere shift and peered closer at the oncoming chaos. Horror washed over him as he recognized the mutated beast. It was his beloved. He never imagined his desperate experiments would warp her into this nightmare. His attempts to resurrect his wife had backfired horribly. Her eyes were completely blank. The sweet woman named Yu-hun was gone, replaced by a soulless husk. She kept muttering about the smell of fresh blood, waking her primitive hunger. A sickening grin spread across her face, proving she was now a predator. Quartz stared in absolute terror, utterly frozen and unable to even try defending himself. Meanwhile, Baphomet was furious that some random monster dared disrupt his fight. He hated when trash stepped in to steal his targets, so he went on the attack. The beast shrieked in agony, wailing out for its mother in a heartbreaking display. The cries were meant to beg for mercy, which completely shattered Quartz's heart. Baphomet knew things had gotten incredibly serious. He quickly unleashed his passive skill, Fierce Battle, to prepare. He did not care if the mentor still saw her as his wife. To Baphomet, she was just another rabid beast that needed putting down. He boosted all his attributes, ready to obliterate the mindless killing machine. Gritting his teeth, Baphomet growled at the grieving old man. He reminded him that he had already warned him about these consequences. He still could not fathom how the mentor brought her back, but it felt deeply unnatural. The sheer volume of repulsive energy used actually made the demon inside him gag. He found it hard to believe a mere mortal could wield such forbidden arts. He wondered who had actually backed this crazy old man to spawn this monstrosity. Regardless of the mystery, he had a raging beast to deal with first. Seriously, collecting parts of dead wives is a pretty disgusting hobby anyway. Show no mercy, Baphomet immediately drove his blade straight into the creature. There was not a single shred of hesitation in his eyes. Sure, their backstory was tragic, but this monster could not even react to his blinding speed. It simply flailed around in complete confusion. Baphomet refused to waste any more time. He ripped his dagger free and prepared to deliver the final, crushing blow. Baphomet continues his relentless assault, leaping high into the air, slicing. Through the sky, with a burst of strength, he strikes the monster, which no longer tries to fight back, quietly accepting its grim fate. With countless eyes, the beast watches the sharp dagger blade closing in. For a few 10 seconds, the entire area seems to freeze, holding its breath in suspense. Suddenly, a massive fountain of dark blood spurts violently from one of the creature's mangled limbs. In a flash, there are even more crimson splatters, raining down in all directions and staining everything. In a scene of pure chaotic madness, soon all that remains of the creature is a mangled, bloody pile of flesh. Baphomet doesn't stop there, relentlessly hacking away at the target with his weapon. Quartz watches in absolute horror as the beast, once his beloved wife, is ripped apart. Her severed head drops with a heavy thud right before him, leaving a grim trail of dark blood, the final marker of this brutal execution. The broken husband still cannot believe this nightmare is actually real life because everything feels so deeply distorted, like a horrific fever dream. The woman he cherished now looks completely monstrous, showing a hollow, blank stare, with zero warmth or memory of their life together. Meanwhile, the dying beast uses its very last ounce of strength to mumble about being incredibly hungry, as if starvation is the only reality left to it. The protagonist, Baphomet, is determined to erase every trace of this threat, so he crushes the remaining pieces with everything he has. Then, out of nowhere, the system warns that those who crave power always pay a terrible price. The system window explains that his passive skill, Fierce Battle, triggered a cruelty debuff, filling Baphomet with a wild thirst for blood. Honestly, the guy does not see an issue here because it changes nothing about his true nature. From the start, Baphomet planned to execute Quartz, completely ignoring his superior's orders. He knows this desperate man would do anything to survive and never let go of his monstrous wife, meaning he deserves no mercy. Our hero figures this twisted couple can reunite down in the depths of hell, but waits. Suddenly, an urgent warning screen flashes before his eyes, announcing a major threat to the host system. Everything completely freezes, and Baphomet collapses straight to the dirt, completely drained of all energy. it seems the extreme danger level of Baphomet's human vessel just hit its limit from overusing his stats. Because of this, his skills and movements are completely locked down until his system cools back to a safe zone. Meanwhile, Quartz is only growing stronger, fueled by pure rage toward the guy who just slaughtered his beloved. He places all the blame on Baphomet, pointing to him as the villain who ruined their quiet, hidden life and shattered their peaceful routine. Now, Baphomet realizes that while he fought hard to complete his mission, he might actually lose this entire battle. Right at the end, Quartz glares, snarling that things would be much better if Baphomet had simply looked the other way and left them alone. Instead, Quartz tightly grips his deadly weapon. He gripped his weapon tightly, preparing to deliver the final, crushing blow. Baphomet honestly believed that everything was set up just to corner him. He felt completely helpless, but his system immediately chimed in to answer panicked thoughts, explaining that its actions were driven purely by worry for him. Right then, Ma Sunwoon rushed in and kicked the weapon straight out of the villain's hand with an incredibly powerful strike. Baphomet looked up in absolute shock, wondering who had saved him. Even Quartz was completely stunned by the sudden interruption, completely caught off guard by this unexpected turn of events. The powerful leader offered no explanations, giving Quartz only a cold, indifferent apology. Without warning, he unleashed a brutal strike, forcing the villain to feel the unbelievable force, warning Quartz that he was about to put him to sleep. The corrupt mentor stood absolutely no chance against Ma Sunwoon's destructive power, flying backward like a ragdoll and crashing heavily into the solid concrete wall. He left a massive crater in the wall before sliding down, completely unconscious. Baphomet was finally out of danger. Surveying the aftermath, Ma Sunwoon grumbled at the chaotic, ruined room. However, he quickly spotted something highly important. Baphomet had actually uncovered definitive proof of the corrupt mentor's horrific crimes. The boss admitted that the entire situation had gone a bit too chaotic. But at the end of the day, their plan had worked out. Baphomet had executed his mission brilliantly, yet our young hero felt deeply frustrated with how it ended, believing he should have finished off Quartz. In his rage, Baphomet initially pointed the finger at his own system, blaming it for his failure, but he soon realized the real issue was his own pathetic weakness. Meanwhile, Ma Sunwoon observed that the battered youth was too injured to take a step, yet his eyes burned with relentless, unstoppable fury. Sometime later, Director Ma sat down with his close ally Taeyun, explaining that Baphomet had been heavily sedated and rushed straight to the nearest hospital because of his frantic state, as Taeyun noted the massive commotion caused. The uproar meant alerting other hunters was completely impossible. Instead, the two shifted their focus to a much darker and deeply troubling mystery. They questioned the bizarre power turning deceased humans into highly aggressive monsters. Ma Sunwoon then turned his gaze directly to Quartz, who sat silently in the back. He pressed the man about his late wife, who had also been transformed, demanding to know who was actually behind her bizarre, sudden recovery. Quartz kept quiet, trying to guard his secrets, though he knew it was futile. Eventually, the truth would have to come out. He finally decided to speak, sharing whispers he heard about a special, highly classified government department. Its sole purpose was tracking down and eliminating rogue, criminal hunters. Quartz had never expected Director Ma to take charge of such a dangerous unit, knowing the director was stepping onto a very lonely path. Ma Sunwoon grimly agreed, knowing he had to personally police his own allies, physically tracking and punishing anyone who broke the law, no matter what. That was the real reason he was interrogating Quartz right now, demanding to know who received the classified intel on rookies in exchange for his wife. It was treason, and now Ma Sunwoon waited for the final confession, waiting silently for his mentor to answer him, but Quartz just looked down, indifferently, refusing to reveal the real mastermind who was actually behind his crimes. Ma Sunwoon concluded that this hunter would never talk. But right then, Ton noticed that something was seriously wrong with their car. The driver slammed on the brakes, but they completely refused to work. The pedal resisted his foot, trapping them in a highly dangerous situation. He frantically reported the failure to Ma Sunwoon while Quartz prepared his move. Quartz put his plan into motion. Quietly, the old mentor muttered a final warning. He said capturing him would be impossible as the dark entity began to rise. The shadowy substance filled the backseat as Quartz wished Ma Sunwoon good luck. Only then did Masa Wang spin around to see the madness unfolding behind him. But it was already too late. The tires screeched on the pavement. The vehicle crashed violently into a barrier, halting any chance of stopping the escape. Amidst the smoking wreckage, Quartz easily slipped free from the crushed metal. Leaving the ruined car behind, the strange substance began to shift and warp. Within seconds, the bizarre dark mass began transforming into a living creature. Once the change finished, an ordinary white cat stood on the asphalt. The feline stretched lazily, preparing to stroll away without a single care. Ignoring the smoking wreckage, the clever creature calmly left the crash site behind. Vanishing without a trace, Quartz knew exactly where he needed to go next. He slipped through an open window, entering a quiet building nearby. When the cat hopped onto a table, a nearby tablet screen suddenly glowed. It displayed the full file of Baphomet, proving he was now a target. Meanwhile, our hero Baphomet finally woke up feeling an intense, heavy pressure. He struggled to breathe, feeling like a heavy weight was crushing his chest. It felt as though someone was squeezing the very air out of him. But looking down, he realized it was just a white cat sleeping peacefully. The creature lay right on top of him, which was incredibly unexpected. Finding a cat in a hospital bed left him completely at a loss. Staring at it, Baphomet slowly realized he had seen this feline before. Suddenly, the head doctor walked in, surprised patient number 302 was awake. Our hero froze in absolute terror the very instant he heard her speak. Only one person in the entire world would ever address him by that number. Smirking coyly, she remarked that they had not seen each other in forever. She asked how Baphomet was doing, triggering a sudden flood of terrible memories. He remembered exactly how she had forced him to pay off his medical bills. Terrified of this dangerous woman, Baphomet let out a loud, panicked scream. The sudden noise startled her cat, Sasha, so she quickly scooped her up. Our hero could not understand what this crazy doctor was doing here. But the answer was simple. She was the one who owned the entire hospital. She admitted her surprise that Baphomet was working for a leader like Masa Wang. She never pegged him as the type who would take orders from anyone else. The doctor licked her lips, clearly planning something mischievous in her mind. Reaching under his shirt, she playfully noted his physical condition had improved. Baphomet immediately flinched, utterly powerless against her terrifying advances. He threatened her, emphasizing he was stronger now and would not tolerate her tricks. But the hospital director quickly reminded him of his previous pathetic state. She reminded him of his past state, eventually realizing that things were going too far. If anyone overheard their private conversation, they might suspect something was wrong. That something was suspicious. Baphomet was deeply angered by her playing dumb. She kept asking annoying questions, pretending she had absolutely no idea. The doctor believed the only clueless person was patient 302. She leaned close to Baphomet, whispering that they were totally alone in this room. Meanwhile, the receptionist sat quietly at her desk, waiting for visitors to arrive. Soon, a male visitor walked up to the front desk looking for someone. He asked if Chaman was staying there, and she replied he was still recovering. Terrible shape, just then, Baphomet let out a loud, blood-curdling scream. That wild scream literally shook the entire hospital, sending the leader running. Mosen Woon quickly burst into the room and excitedly asked what happened. Inside, the hospital director seemed completely out of her mind. She was laughing hysterically and wildly, entirely ignoring the chaos around her. Meanwhile, our hero lay completely motionless on the cold floor. He was passed out, no longer reacting to his ultimate worst nightmare. In truth, she only laughed because teasing patient 302 was her favorite hobby. He woke up immediately. Baphomet accused his boss of playing cheap tricks. He suspected a trap because this crazy doctor actually knew Ma Sanwo. Now he was sure they conspired from the start to make him a government dog. The leader thought Baphomet had a classic case of main character syndrome. He honestly acted as if the entire universe revolved solely around him. Mosen Woon explained that back before guilds existed, he and the director were close colleagues. They had worked side by side through endless hardships and struggles. Now the state had indeed stepped in, putting Baphomet under hospital lockdown. But the young man saw no good reason for this lockup. Suddenly, Mosen Woon paused, then quietly broke the news that Kurtz was dead. Absolutely stunned, Baphomet simply could not believe his own ears. The leader explained that the villain was eliminated by his own mysterious backers. His lifeless body was found, dumped right in the middle of a busy road. Innocent civilians were highly likely to get caught in the crossfire. So they tried to minimize the damage while extracting any useful clues. They planned to track down anyone connected to that forbidden resurrection magic. He was highly confident this lead would point straight to Kurtz's killer. But in reality, Baphomet did not care about any of their investigations. He was simply furious that the villain had died a pointless death. He wanted to end Kurtz with his own hands, but the chance was gone. He felt like a dog who went through absolute hell to deliver Kurtz, only for the leader to completely blow the opportunity to finish him. Mosen Woon deeply regretted it, but Baphomet was not accepting any hollow apologies. Instead, he demanded permission to hunt down this mysterious killer himself. The leader called that pure suicide, since the boy's rank was far too low. Even the top hunters could not decipher this shadow organization's true intentions. Facing an S-rank villain, Baphomet definitely didn't mince his words. He said outright that the leader lacked the ability to handle this situation. In Manhwa's shoes, he would have noticed every detail right away, figured it all out, and extracted all the information from his mentor. The leader was furious with his subordinate, calling him a total idiot, who had no boundaries, treating it like a game, so he asked how. The main character planned to catch that unknown hunter as a B rank. After that, the guy calmed down and left, and the doctor escorted him out. In the hallway, Manhwa was extremely unhappy that he just walked away from their conversation, so he tried to catch up. In response, the main character just flipped him off proudly, talk about absolute contempt. He didn't even bother looking back at his mentor because he completely hated this useless conversation. Manhwa just resigned himself to the kid's terrible personality. While the doctor never expected these boys to fight so quickly, the supervisor quickly explained that they hadn't actually had a real fight, but had only bumped into each other to vent their built-up anger. After that, Manhwa asked if it was true that the headmistress had extorted money from Chaman under the cheap and greedy pretext of his medical treatment. The hospital owner immediately played dumb, pretending she forgot. Manhwa immediately decided he would report this straight to the police, since a government official had dared to do such a thing, but she begged him to listen, explaining she had her reasons. She started her story. Recalling the day the government brought a blood-covered young man to her clinic, the agents coldly said she could decide for herself whether to save the dying victim or leave him there to rot. Showing zero sympathy, the headmistress recognized his face right away. He was actually a famous celebrity she had seen on television. She knew the government wanted to make him a hero, but failed. It sickened her how they used these fighters and tossed them out like trash. Manhwa immediately warned her to be extremely careful with her sharp words, since he was a government dog too, which she totally loved mocking. She claimed she had no idea, asking if the director was truly a brainless government lackey or a dangerous wolf hiding his true nature. Eventually, she continued her story about Chaman, who had been considered a hopeless patient, making his very survival feel like an absolute miracle. Usually, a patient needs some inner physical strength left to recover. But in Baphomet's case, everything was completely and utterly different. Then something completely flipped her perspective on him. A glowing red system window suddenly appeared right before her shocked eyes, warning her that she must save him or he would die. So Kim Yuang did everything in her power to save patient 302. To this day, she believed she truly surpassed her own limits. Only now did Manhwa realize that this wasn't a simple mission alert or danger warning, but that the system window was actively threatening his close friend. Only then did the leader realize the system had its own dark consciousness. She had absolutely no clue that such a strange phenomenon even existed. Meanwhile, the girl thought the whole thing actually felt pretty romantic. She always had this feeling that the system truly loved and protected number 302 with all its heart. Meanwhile, Baphomet met Talon for work, but Talon warned him that Baphomet was still in quarantine and needed rest, so he suggested spending some time recovering. He also asked Baphomet not to worry, because all hunters go through this at least once. It was just a vacation. For him, it turned out the seasoned hunter had already spoken to the boss, asking if they should keep monitoring Baphomet like before, and the boss replied that it was absolutely necessary, but Mongwon emphasized that this time things had to be quite different. They had to not only observe him but protect their dear colleague. In the end, Ton warned Baphomet that they would contact him when they received further instructions. Before saying goodbye, Baphomet asked his colleague where he got those things in his ears. Baphomet immediately went to get his ears pierced, putting in several earrings, and then headed off to rest as advised. He knew a break was necessary for a successful future battle. He realized that despite the fact that very little time had passed since he became human, he had not yet found the time to enjoy normal life. To start with, Baphomet wanted to eat his fill, asking the waiter to bring 2 more bowls of rice and 5 whole portions of meat, surprising everyone inside the restaurant. Baphomet decided not to lag behind ordinary humans, so he even snapped a few photos of his dinner. He left the place, grabbing a few tasty snacks to enjoy on the way. Baphomet decided to experience not just the food but some fun activities too. He decided to try everything there was to do in downtown Seoul to distract himself from his heavy problems as much as possible. After that, Baphomet headed to the library to check out the books that people read with such interest. He also decided to visit a movie theater, picking a creepy horror film and hoping it would bring him some excitement. On the screen, a terrifying monster attacked the main characters, threatening to curse them forever, dragging them into an abyss of fear and absolute doom. Baphomet immediately imagined what he would do if he were in those weak humans' shoes. Such weak monsters did not scare him at all. He would have just chased the possessed girl to grab her hand. After the movie ended, Baphomet decided to take a quiet walk and stumbled upon a street musician. For a few brief seconds, he listened spellbound to her singing and guitar, completely absorbed by a beautiful melody that felt like magic filling the air around him. But after a while, Baphomet hesitated slightly, deciding to leave everything behind and continue on his way, lost in his secret thoughts. Honestly, the guy was not happy, even though he had spent a pretty eventful evening. No matter what he did in this weak body, nothing gave him any pleasure. That was a huge problem. Baphomet wondered if his burning desire to become human was actually a fatal mistake, but in the end, he knew that any lost power could be regained. At that exact moment, the glowing red system window popped up again, asking if Baphomet was feeling sad. The guy could barely believe his eyes, laughing because at this rate he was going completely mad. Baphomet believed all of this was caused by the mysterious entity currently pretending to try to help him. She was only pretending while orchestrating this insane chaos around him. He demanded answers. Why exactly was she doing this to him? The system's cold reply offered only one cryptic detail: it was all for Baphomet. But he did not feel that way, believing someone was simply trying to torture. At that exact moment, the mastermind behind the screen initiated a dangerous new protocol. Baphomet demanded to know what she was going to do next, but the system remained completely silent. Baphomet braced himself, expecting her to get in his way. Again, he prepared for another brutal confrontation, knowing her resistance was coming. The mysterious girl remained silent as the new system protocol successfully launched. A warning message flashed, stating the entire program required a total restructure in case of another failure. By now, Baphomet was absolutely furious with rage. He screamed out, "Just kill me now, stop these pointless games." The mysterious creator behind it all hoped she would succeed this time. She waited. The protocol needed to work. Baphomet was completely desperate. He kept shouting, "Kill me, just end this nightmare already." Too late, the hacking program was already successfully launched. The system congratulated the administrator on her success. The protocol executed. Now, the massive Earth system hack began. Now watch, this was her goal. Baphomet sensed extreme danger. Something was terribly wrong. The entire world froze solid around him. He alone could move. Reality itself was waiting for his next step. Suddenly, the administrator materialized right next to the guy. She apologized immediately, sorry for the pain. Then she entered a girl nearby, explaining she did not build this particular Earth's system. That made her a bit late. Suddenly, another girl spoke in her voice, asking Baphomet to please understand her perspective. She insisted she never wanted to hurt him, and right now she could reveal everything. She wanted to explain why she had to take his powers. Baphomet definitely did not expect all this. He was facing the mastermind behind his crazy journey. Finally, all his doubts and questions had answers. A gentle smile played on her face. She was genuinely happy to see him. This reunion meant absolutely everything. She had waited forever for this. A second later, she started to slowly materialize. out of thin air, standing right before him, ready to reveal her secrets. The long-awaited talk was finally starting. Her presence felt magical, like she came from a completely different world. Having absolutely nothing in common with this reality, she was otherworldly. Baphomet was completely speechless. He never expected anything this insane and unpredictable. This is absolutely wild. The administrator had a secret. She had tried hundreds of millions of times to finally escape her system and show her true form. On top of that, she had run hundreds of millions of virtual simulations to see what happens if she placed Baphomet inside a weak human body. That vessel packed with demonic power. Eventually, those countless grueling tests finally yielded some results. She realized that every single time, his fragile human shell simply ended up dying. His body was repeatedly ripped to bloody pieces, or he was simply pierced straight through, but the grim outcome remained exactly the same. These endless tests gave the administrator zero answers, so she stopped. She chose to wait for an unpredictable outcome. Naturally, Baphomet noticed this shift. He realized the girl was now counting entirely on him, watching his next move. She confirmed his suspicions, explaining that only he could satisfy her deep desires. Only he could satisfy her deep curiosity, and right then, the demon called out. Driven by his ultimate desires, he made the choice to become human. Talk about a massive gamble. He hoped this choice would change his destiny forever. Main character sat utterly speechless, having absolutely no idea how to respond. He had absolutely no clue that all these events were so deeply connected. Finally, he realized this meant God had actually granted his ultimate wish. With a cold smirk, Baphomet demanded to know who had slain him previously. He roughly grabbed the administrator, his eyes burning with intense, desperate rage, demanding to know if his killer was someone far stronger than himself. Honestly, this was the exact reaction the girl had been waiting for all along. Unafraid, she slowly reached out her hand to show him something completely unexpected. She revealed mysterious entities, explaining that they were completely unbeatable. These terrifying creatures were monsters that his original power could never hope to defeat.